Mm-mm-mm-mm.
Oop. One. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another small screen Star Wars. As always, I'm Julian Mush, and I'm joined by Rachel Wilkinson.
Hello there.
And we're going to be talking about today the Book of Boba Fett, Season 1, Episode 5, Return of the Mandalorian. Or should I say, The Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 1? Because
I know,
that's
eh?
really what we're
God.
dealing with here. We'll get into that, but this
Yeah.
episode is baffling to me. So,
Oh,
well,
baffling.
I think it's great, but it's just very odd. The thinking is just very weird. I
Mm-hmm.
even, because of the occasion, I pulled out my my fancy Mando helmet.
Oh, your
I
Mando
even have a
helmet.
fancy stand for it now. So I've got it
Oh.
here next to me, hanging out. Me and
Yeah, I guess you can't wear it because it muffles you.
It's very muffling. Yeah, I tried it. Remember, I tried that once last
Yeah, you
season, and
did.
it sounded really stupid.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah. So before we get into everything, I'll just remind everyone at home to follow us on Twitter at Tower Babblecast. Head over to facebook.com/Tower Babblecast and go over to our website, towerofbabble.ca, to find everything that we do, including our flagship show, the Tower of Babble podcast. We just did the annual Toby Awards, where we handed out our top 3 favorite films and TV shows of the last year. You can check that out on the main feed. Some surprises in there. Some you might expect as well. Spider-Man gets his due, I think, pretty well. But yeah, there's a little Star Wars in there if you're interested. So yeah, go check that out. And like I said, that's on the main Tower Babble feed. You can find that on all your podcast catchers of choice. Also, we have a Patreon. You can help support the show. You can head over to patreon.com/Tower Babblecast. For as little as $5 a month, you get access to our exclusive monthly film clubs. I'm going to ask you for the 100th time, which movie are we doing this month?
This month we are doing Misery.
Misery. I haven't seen it, but it is available on Apple TV, so I'm going to be renting it
Oh, okay.
sometime in the next day or two, and then we're going to be talking about it over the weekend. We don't do those live,
No.
but you can find those all in our feed. There's a whole couple years worth you can go back over. But we are doing this episode live. This is live on Twitch. It's live on YouTube, and it's live on Twitter, which is my social media platform of choice, my favorite. So you can find that we record these every Thursday evening, typically anywhere between 7:30 and 8 p.m. Central. So, and it's 8:22 p.m. Central as we speak right now. We had planned for 7:30 today, but I got to be honest. In rewatching, which usually takes slightly longer than the actual like normal watch that I do to take my notes. Took almost twice as long. I think it took 2 hours because there is just so much here. There's so much to unpack, and it's like, the thing is, I really wasn't expecting to be doing this like Mandalorian type conversation, in the middle of this season, and it's not even the middle; it's like the back half of it.
That, and there's so many different like places we saw, and like Easter eggs, and there's so much stuff to go through. So there's so much stuff.
It's nuts, actually. How much stuff. So let's get into it. This is like I said before. This is season 1, episode 5 or chapter 5, called "Return of the Mandalorian." Obviously, great classic Star Wars name. Gotta love a Return of the type title. Revenge of the would be another classic one you could use. So that's fairly straightforward. I was kind of surprised we didn't just see the Mandalorian like title card come up instead of the Book of Boba Fett one.
Oh yeah.
After the cold open, because it does start with a cold open.
It does, yeah.
In a meatpacking plant, but this episode is written by Jon Favreau and Noah Kluwer, directed by Bryce Dallas Howard. So this will be now her 3rd episode of Star Wars that she's done. Of course, her first one was in Mandalorian season 1, when Mando goes to that like forest planet and helps protect that like little tribe of
the little village.
Yeah, the little village from those Klatooinian raiders. There was a walker in that one. That one's cool. I didn't love that episode at first, but upon rewatch, to prepare for season 2, I really actually like that episode a lot. In retrospect, it's quite good. Then season 2. She does the episode that I believe, if I'm recalling correctly, she does the episode that introduces Bo-Katan into Star Wars. So there's back into live action Star Wars. So there's some really good stuff under her belt.
Yeah, exactly.
And now this episode, I think, very strong as a standalone Mandalorian episode. And now I'm seeing a lot of chatter online. People saying, okay, you can direct a movie now, right? I'd be fine with that. I'm not against that. I would love it. They're just the movies just don't seem to be being made, so I don't know.
I'm just to me, I'm like, I don't know. Like, she wasn't qualified beforehand. Get out of here.
Well, I mean, I
get it.
Yes,
like, you need
to
show that like you can, that you're good at it. I appreciate that, but I feel like we've seen enough good stuff from her already. But
but I mean, Bryce Dallas Howard's directing career I don't think is very long. Of course, she comes from a long line. Not a long line, but her dad is a very famous director, obviously, right? So if I look at her directing credits here, she's got 10 under her belt. She directed 2 shorts, 2006, 2011, a music video, something for Vanity Fair. Her first real directing job was The Mandalorian, chapter 4, Sanctuary, and chapter 11, The Heiress. So now chapter 5, Return of the Mandalorian, but her acting career is much longer than that. She has 42 acting credits under her belt. She was a relatively unproven commodity, I'd say, in the directing space. I think she's clearly proven that she has the talent to do this,
absolutely, yeah.
At a feature scale. I think this episode especially really has a feature.
It looked so
quality.
Good. It looked awesome. I loved it.
I think it's the best looking episode we've seen.
Me too.
Of Star Wars in a very long time. Yeah.
To give, just to
it's not all
credit
her.
Where credit is due. Yeah. It's like, it's probably partly because it just wasn't on Tatooine the whole time.
Well, that's true, but also it's like, ILM's doing good work here.
At the same time, it was just good.
There's a lot of good visual stuff here. Okay, so let's get into this. The log line here is: an unexpected ally emerges. What a useless log line that is.
They seem very simple with the log lines for this. Like, they're just very cut and dry.
Also, it's like, what do you mean an unexpected ally emerges? At the end of the last episode, you're like, oh, credits can buy you muscle, and it plays the Mandalorian theme. Everyone knew what was
Yeah.
going to happen here, and then it implies, like, an ally implies that we would be spending time with Boba Fett, and then Mando would emerge unexpectedly, right? But that's not what happens here. Boba Fett doesn't even appear in this episode,
Yeah.
although he does get top billing because it is, I guess, contractually, it is still his show. So
Mhm.
whatever. Anyway, we start in this meat packing plant. This is the cold open. Mando and this is Din Djarin for those who. Okay, hold on. Let's just pause here for a second. Were
Okay.
you surprised at all? I mean, you weren't surprised to see Mandalorian. I think we were both not
No.
shocked there.
Yeah.
But were you surprised by the fact that this whole episode was just Mandalorian centric? This is essentially an episode of The Mandalorian.
Yes.
Right?
Oh yeah, I was super surprised. Yeah, no, I was not expecting to get basically an entire Mando episode. That wouldn't have ever even slightly crossed my mind.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting. I'm obviously very much not mad at it. I just wasn't expecting it.
Yeah, and it's like, I'm not mad at it either because, again, I think this is really, there's some super cool stuff in here.
Yeah.
I'm just more like annoyed with the whole concept of putting in a Mandalorian episode into the middle of the Book of Boba Fett, because I think if you were watching the Book of Boba Fett and you had not seen the Mandalorian, I think you'd be very confused. Like, this episode is impenetrable, in my opinion, for someone who doesn't know who Din Djarin is. Like, what is this? You came here for the Boba Fett, and you get this other guy who's arguably way cooler than Boba Fett is, and like doing all this cool stuff with a lightsaber and yada yada. But like, there's all this lore
Yeah.
explained, and it comes out of nowhere. I feel like I don't know if there's a lot of people who are watching the Book of Boba Fett who haven't seen The Mandalorian, but what I'm saying is, if those people do exist, I'd love to hear from you, because I want to know what you would have thought of this episode standalone, because it's odd. It just, like, I think I saw some people refer to it kind of like, oh, it's like comic book crossovers.
Oh yeah,
right?
exactly. It's kind of, I mean, it happens a lot obviously in the series, like the comics that I read. A lot of times, like they go alongside each other for a bit in the same time, and then there'll be one that's the next in both, right? So
Right, but usually in that case, it's like, hey, you'll read Darth Vader, issues 1 through 4, and then it'll say, okay, hey, if you want to continue the story, go read Boba Fett, issue
yes.
46 or whatever, right? It's like,
Yeah.
okay, that makes sense, but that's because you're going to a different book. This is inside
I know.
the same book. Now, I also heard someone explain it like they're calling the Book of Boba Fett, they're treating it like a novel. It's not uncommon for, in a novel, you spend a bunch of time with your main character, and then a random chapter of a book that would be a completely different character.
Yeah, that's
and you
very
go
true.
through their mission, and then and then they get joined up with the rest of the crew later. I can understand that. I do get that. But what really baffles me here is that so much of this episode is dealing with the ramifications of the the Mandalorian season 2 finale.
Yeah,
this really
it's exactly. Yeah, it's a lot of stuff that was kind of mentioned in The Mandalorian, and now we're like picking up storyline from there, which I agree is a little strange.
So it's like, why? Here's how, if in my mind, the way to do this would be slightly different. Now, we prefer to treat the show as what it is and review it as what it is, but this is such a baffling, crazy, surprising move. I just want, like, this is how I imagined it would have gone. Would have been, if we're going to do a whole Mando episode, it's kind of like a side mission Mando episode, where it's like, I don't know, maybe he's on a bounty. We kind of see it at the beginning of this, but it's not as, it's not required reading for the Mandalorian series. This is like, if you're watching only the Mandalorian, you're not interested in the Book of Boba Fett, I would say to someone, okay, well, go watch if you don't want to watch Book of Boba Fett, watch the Mandalorian season 1, then season 2, then go watch the Book of Boba Fett chapter 5.
Oh, absolutely. It's going to have to be
right.
in that canon space for sure, and in that chronological order. I mean, I guess we're going to have to kind of see how everything else rolls out for the rest of the season for Book of Boba Fett, and like kind of understand why, and within the next season of Mandalorian, because maybe this content doesn't really fit with what they're doing with Mando in the next season. So maybe there just isn't really another place to put this except for here. So
I didn't consider that. Like, this is like, okay, this is our chance to wrap this up, and then we can tell a new story. I mean, that's true. I think
like I say, yeah, we'll see. But
the way the episode ends, where he's kind of like, oh, I got to go I got to go visit a little friend. It's like, okay, well, it implies that he's going to go see Grogu. But it would be weird, I think, and very soon, maybe too soon, for us to see Grogu again, considering the like very emotionally charged finale that was Mando season 2.
That's kind of what I'm thinking, though. So, we have this episode, right?
Right.
That's Book of Boba Fett. And then Mando's going to go do his thing. And that's probably all the contents of the next season of The Mandalorian. And then him coming back to help Boba Fett is maybe after that.
I mean, like, that's a pretty big time jump. I mean, like, are you going to squeeze a whole season in between, like, a week of Tatooine time? I think more likely what happens is he tries to go visit Grogu, but then something happens and he can't. And he has to stay with Boba Fett. Because, like, we're talking about 2 episodes left in the Book of Boba Fett. And it's like, it bugs me because it's a complete narrative halt. All the progress we've made with Boba Fett, it's ups, it's downs, a lot of lows, but like there's some good stuff in there. We've had our complaints, but it's completely halted for a better show. And now we're gonna go pick back up with Boba Fett, and it's gonna feel disjointed. And I mean, I don't know. I'm gonna hold my judgment till that, but like we're gonna wrap up everything with Boba Fett in 2 episodes, and now Mando's here, so it's like I don't know. I'm very concerned, but hey, we'll reserve judgment, I suppose, until we see it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, let's jump into it.
There's a lot of preamble there. Okay, we're in the meatpacking plant. Mando appears in silhouette, then emerges through these like plastic sheeting. We hear his cool like flute
whistle
play. Yeah, very cool.
I like what they did with his silhouette there because he kind of looked like Boba Fett for a split second.
Yeah,
like, it was the same sort of outline. Like his stick kind of looked like Boba Fett's little launcher, and then the cape and everything. Like it looked very. For the split second, you're like, Oh no, it's not.
Well, I mean, it is the Book of Boba Fett, so
no,
I
know. I get
exactly.
why. I liked the little fake out there for that second, but
right. And then you're like, oh wow, it's the way cooler version, and then
I was just oh yeah, immediately.
So yeah, it's super cool, and he's got the spear, and he's got everything. It's really dope. And then so he's walking through this meatpacking plant. He's looking for Kaba Baez. This is a Klatooinian with a bounty on his head, and I thought this exchange is so cool. Just like
me too.
This kind of like Godfather-esque kind of exchange where he's like, "How do you know he's here?" And he pulls out the little fob, and he's like, "Well, listen, he's not here. Let me let me take a message for you, basically." And then he's like, "How do you even know what he looks like?" And he pulls up the thing. He's like, "That doesn't even look like me."
Yeah.
It's like, what do you mean? It clearly looks like that. It's just very fun.
Made me laugh because he was so distinctive. It's like, oh, the guy with the same person with the exact same face tattoo and piercings and jowl piercings.
The nose piece. Yeah, exactly.
He's like, that doesn't even look like me.
That doesn't even look like me.
You're just laughing. Like, okay.
Yeah, I love it. I love it, though. It's so good. And then he's just playing it cool the whole way. And he's like, hey, listen, I'm sure you're a reasonable person. You seem like a reasonable person. How can we let's talk this through. And then he has his line, which I didn't realize had become this like when he says it, you're like, oh shit, that's so badass. I can bring you in warm, or I can bring you in cold.
Yeah, I love how he kind of sighs beforehand too.
Yeah,
like it's almost like he's just kind of exasperated. He walks in and he tells the other guy, because they're all standing up like puffing out their chests, and he kind of tells him like, I have no quarrels with you. You can walk away. And he's trying to be diplomatic about it, but no.
I mean, did you expect them to walk away?
No, but it's just like he's very much more not unhinged, but I think I've saw some other people saying the same thing about like, Grogu's not with him anymore, so he doesn't have to like hold back or feel like he has to. It is pretty cool. Hold back,
yeah, he doesn't have to pull his punches at all, and what we see here is really badass. So there's this fight scene, and what I love is that they don't really like. They cut right to the chase, right?
Oh,
he pulls out the Darksaber, and he's
so cool.
Cutting people in half.
Yeah.
Cutting his own leg too, which is, I think, I love that he cuts his own leg here.
Me too.
The reason I think it's cool is because I don't know how many times, I don't even know where I originally heard it, but I don't even know if it's originally even said in Star Wars anywhere, but there's this kind of like general knowledge that, if you're not a Jedi, if you tried to use a lightsaber, you'd cut your own arm off, or you'd definitely kill yourself.
It's like
right?
you're gonna injure yourself. Like you need to know how to wield that weapon because it's crazy dangerous.
Right. So he's trying to, and he almost cuts his leg off. And so I think that's like a really cool idea to show. It feels really true to the world. Kind of it feels like fan service, but in the right way.
See, okay, I was gonna say, I'm like, I didn't feel like it felt like fan service, but I understand like proper fan service where it's like it felt more honest about,
right?
Be like, yeah, like not everyone can just pick up these weapons and be super good at wielding them all of a sudden.
I say like fan service in the sense that like it's a thing that the fans have been talking about for a long time.
Yeah, I know what you mean, for sure. Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so he finishes them off. Brutal finish, by the way, where he where he cuts him right in half through the table. I thought, oh, so cool, right? Mm-hmm. So after the fight, he cuts the head off and he got it in a bag, and then he comes out and there's this whole gang of these Clatoonians who are like this guy's former employees, and he's like, listen, there's a whole stack of cash in there. You're welcome to it if you just let me go.
Right.
And then they're fine with that deal.
Yeah, they're like, all right.
So he gets out of there.
Yeah.
Then we have the title card, like I mentioned. So it was a cold open, and then we have both Mando and Boba's theme play over top of each other, and they do fit together really well.
They fit together super well. That's kind of I was gonna say. I'm like, it sounded so good. No, I love this whole opening scene. I liked the way the butcher shop the butcher shop looked. It gave me those really old school like gangster movie feels. Like someone 100%. Always owns when there's crime involved, somebody always owns a butcher shop. There's always a murder in a butcher shop. It's so good. And then I also like really enjoyed the Clatoonians in general. Clatoonians, yeah. Clatoonians. I like how they can, because I feel like a lot of times in Star Wars we get different species and they just kind of make them all generically look the same.
Right.
And I liked that they gave each of them kind of like a distinctive look or color pattern or just they were all kind of slightly different, which I really appreciated. I'm like, that's really cool. We don't see enough of like the diversity within a species in Star Wars, except for like Twi'leks being different colors and
it's generally like it's the same thing with Rodians. You'll get a green one or a blue one. And it's like, and otherwise they look exactly the same. And you're like, and this is cool because it's like they're dog people, right?
Yeah.
They're like bulldog people. And it's like, so, there's every bulldog looks slightly different. So they got like these slightly different versions. And the way that they've designed this is a new, creature. And by the way, I think the first appearance was in Bryce Dallas Howard's episode. So she probably has these close to her heart. But like, they're relatively new invention to Star Wars. So the prosthetic options available to them are much broader, right? They're not restricted by these older kind of things that were invented in the 70s. So they can do some stuff that like really lets facial movement come through, right? I feel like those jowls move a lot. You can really see the mouth and eyes moving. I don't feel like a person in that makeup feels necessarily restricted. They can really act through it. So I like that.
No, for sure. I just like that they were all kind of did different variations and had different looks to them. So I like that. I saw like a few people being like, it looks a little too earthy, right? Like our world.
Oh yeah, I heard people complain that too. And
but
I'm like,
I don't mind that.
I don't know.
I kind of like when I see that kind of stuff in Star Wars. Like, sometimes it will pull me out. Like when the Vespas pulled me out and I was like, those are dumb. But when it's scenes like this where it's like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like, especially when it's more of like an old timey gangster reason why they have a butcher shop.
Well, or it's just like, it's a homage to some other type of filmmaking. And that's fine. And like, here's the thing, like, I'm sure they thought about like, what could we do? How could we make a butcher shop look more like Star Warsy? But like, I don't know how much more, like, what you could do different, to be honest.
Really,
like,
it's just kind of,
in the concept
it is what
art,
it is, right?
In the concept art, it looked like the meat that they had up was like tauntauns or something.
No, they're nerfs.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Okay,
nerfs,
I don't know. What's a nerf?
Like scruffy-looking nerf herder. They're like cows.
Okay.
It's kind of like a cattle, basically.
So, like the ones that we see in the actual show look more like just cows.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah. Which again, I said, like, I get it. It had like the plastic sheeting maybe is what annoys people because like that's. Right,
I guess so. You're like, why don't you just have a sliding door? It's like, yeah, but then you don't get the cool kind of
this
look
is all for,
between. Like you want to be. They wanted it to be able to be see through, right?
It's all dramatic. This is all for all for filmmaking purpose. Anyway, I don't really that argument doesn't really hold water for me in this episode, but I'm willing to hear it out most of the time.
Yeah.
So we cut away from the title card, and we get to this really amazing looking ring world.
So cool.
Super cool. So
yeah.
And what's even cooler about this is a couple things. It's obviously it inspires thoughts of like things like Halo, but ring worlds go way back in sci-fi. There's been ring worlds for a long time in science fiction. And what's really cool about this one is it's not a full loop. There's a whole section that's not cut out, and I guess it faces towards a sun, so that as it rotates, this cutout creates night and day sequences as it rotates.
Yeah. But very quickly, night and day. Like it
rotates fairly quickly.
Yeah,
so
which
like
is kind of cool.
I feel like I would be annoyed by that if I was living on that planet.
I feel like it would make me motion sick.
Well, I don't know if you'd feel it so much if you're on it.
No, but just having like the light pass over you like that so quickly, like from light to dark. But yeah, no, it was very like really cool, and everything just looked really cool when we were in this spot.
It looks so good just from a like set design standpoint. Like the color palette of like when it's lit up looks a lot like the Death Star, the original kind of like 1970s, early 80s kind of sci-fi look, where it when the light hits it, it has this like this model almost look to it. Like it's not all CG, but it looks like it's a model, which is cool. And I just thought it just looked, the details are all there. You see trains going around. There's ships, like looks like you can see the little atmosphere. You can see ships flying around. I just think this is one of the coolest looking places in Star Wars we've maybe seen in a very long time.
Honestly, yeah. It's not just taking us to another like planet, or we're not just going to like Coruscant. It's like a very different thing, and it's so neat how it looks like you can literally just fall off of it.
Like how annoying is it that Tatooine and Jakku are basically the exact same thing?
Yeah.
Like that's super annoying, and I don't like we don't need more desert planets, but we do need more cool. Like I think of remember in Rogue One, they go briefly to that space station that's like built into an asteroid.
Yes.
That's super cool too. That always stands out to me. Now this one is like in that same vein to me, and I had a hard time tracking down the name. My understanding is it's called Glavis. Is the name of this ring world / station. It's not clear what they would call it, but I think it's super cool. Happy that it's included here.
Yeah, same.
And it's we not only do we get to see it from above, by this establishing shot, but we get to see it from ground level. We see Mando carrying the Klatooinian's head in a bag as they kind of show off this ring world. Like he's walking along the streets, and you can kind of see the horizon rise up in the background behind him, and you can see the light running along it, and it kind of passes over him, which is really cool. And then they do this really awesome one shot. So I don't know if you noticed this.
I did, and it was so cool.
Yeah. So he enters an elevator, right? And it goes up the elevator, and he emerges into a nightclub. I thought the nightclub design was really cool. It's in a tower, obviously, because you can see, kind of look out over the station. And he delivers the head to this like gangster who's speaking Huttese. Now, this gangster is played by Helen Sadler, who plays the Ishitib Guildmaster. Ishitib is the species that she's playing. Now, Helen Sadler, interesting enough, I don't really have a connection to her, but she's a longtime voice actor. She's done a lot of Star Wars stuff.
Oh, okay.
So she's, let me just pick up a few here. She's a medical officer in the Star Wars The Bad Batch. She does a bunch of voices for Star Wars Lego stuff. She voices Rey in the Star Wars Holiday Special.
Oh, cute. Okay.
She's Havina Vonreg in Star Wars Squadrons. She's in a lot of video games. She plays Jyn Erso in Star Wars Forces of Destiny. She does a bunch of voices in Star Wars Battlefront 2. She does Jyn Erso again in Star Wars Battlefront, the first one. So like she's been on a lot of stuff, Star Wars wise, but she's done basically voice acting for the majority of her career. But here she is now covered in covered in prosthetics.
Yeah.
To at least for a live action role, I think she does a fine job. So that's cool. She drops off the head, and this Ishitib is kind of like, hey, stay with us, have a meal,
Yeah.
we got another job for you, you're really good. And he's just like, listen, I'm just minding my own business. Either give me the money and the information you promised me, or I'm out of here.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I'm gonna go to somebody else because there's a bounty. So
Right. And so she's like, okay, fine. Have your information. Go to the Kolzak Alley by the heat vents. That's
yeah.
whatever that means. And he gets paid, and he leaves, and he goes. And meanwhile, this whole time, the camera's rotating around this dinner table.
Oh, I just thought it
right?
looked so cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's super cool, and it's you can kind of see that it's being walked around. There's the kind of the way the camera moves is you can tell the person's it's not on a wheelie tripod or anything like that. It's just being carried, so it gives it a little bit more intrigue. And then it follows him around. It falls back to Mando, and then he walks out back onto the elevator, and the elevator goes back down, and that's all in one shot. Now, what's really cool is that obviously there's no elevator in the real world. What they did was it's all blue. It's all green screen, blue screen, or in the
volume.
In the volume, and they swapped out the sets as he goes in and out of the elevator, and I think that's super dope.
Neat.
And only that, like the actual look of as the elevator goes up, you can see out onto the station. It's just so detailed, and it looks so cool. And the light bouncing off of Mando's helmet, all of it like totally works. I thought this is some of the best looking Star Wars stuff we've ever seen.
Oh, it was so good. And yeah, I mean, so in terms of something being a one shot, I also assume that means this was all one take. Like you're not going to, are you going to stitch together multiple takes like this or no?
You can, but typically those are hidden. There's like the camera passes behind like a
like a pillar or something.
Yeah,
right?
And those are, and you can then cut away then. But this is all done in one take. Yeah.
Yeah, this is like a full, because it's over 2 minutes, I think, that this.
Yeah, but also you got to consider that, like, I was thinking about this. It's like it's pretty easy to do adjustments to this because you don't see Mando's mouth move, right?
Right. Yeah, that's true.
And the Ishi-Tib is just speaking in Huttese, so you could just replace any words over it, and they have the subtitles anyway.
Right. Yeah, that's
and no one
true.
else has dialogue, so it's like, yeah, it's all done in one take, but it's be easy enough to, like, if someone even if someone messes up, you just keep going, and then as long as you have the footage you want, you can always do ADR later and fix it. Yeah.
No, that's fair. I also saw a couple things about how it's really neat how Mando holds himself when he's injured. Like he doesn't really let people see how injured he actually is, and then at the end of that take, as soon as he's in the elevator alone, he kind of like collapses a little bit because he's in so much pain.
Yes, and he's like looking. He's like,
yeah, he's just like you're like, oh, okay, like.
So like, what kind of like injury is that? Like a burn, or is it like a cut and burn, or like what's going? Like what is it?
That looks to me more like a burn, like as if you were to take like an iron to your leg and
it's like it's like a whatever the higher than 3rd degree burn is what it looked like.
I feel like once you get past 3rd degree though, you can't feel it anymore.
Oh well, because you're down to the bone or something.
No, because you're like at that point you're frying all your like nerve endings off.
Oh.
So it's
okay, so a 3rd degree, a very intense 3rd degree burn.
Like a 2nd degree is kind of like red and. I just know things, and my boyfriend just got 2nd degree burns the other day at work. So
okay. Well, that's
in the brewery, but no. So
work related injury. That's
it was his own fault.
Just like the Klatooinian who lost his head, a work related injury. Yeah,
but no, like 2nd degree burns, like like a sunburn is like a 1st degree burn, right? 2nd degree is like if it bubbles and you get like those pussy things, and like 3rd degree is if it's like white and it's usually
charred
like and like worse is, and then if it's like black, it's like, oh, okay, you like got your nerves and that's really really bad.
Right. So that's
like
lovely.
Anything past 2nd degree is like hospitalized. You should go. I'd say they're probably at least 3rd.
He's in pretty rough shape.
Yeah.
Like it's just a light nick, but it's like that's all it takes with a lightsaber. And
he easily could have like burned off like the first like chunk of his skin and it just seared off. Like it didn't have to cut it off, but it was just seared off, right? So ugh, gross.
So he gets the information. You're like, what information? Which is cool here is that you're like, when are we picking up with him? Like, what's happening? Like, what's actually going on here? Because none of that information is really revealed to you. Right. And then you're like, okay, he gets down to this like abandoned part of the city, and he turns on his visor, and he gets to see these like hidden glyphs on
So
the
cool.
walls, which is really cool. And he follows these signs, and he goes into this door marked with the Mandalorian symbol, the mythosaur. And then underneath, I thought this shot was really cool. So he opens this door, and it's like this walkway and ladder system that
Yeah.
leads down to space.
Yeah, it basically looks like it's down to like the underneath part of this like ring city
Yes.
kind of thing, right?
Yes.
So yeah, again, it's like that. It looks like if he were to fall off, he would just fall off into space, which is very
Yes.
cool.
Well, and he even slips on the ladder. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my god, I'd be terrified. I'd
Which
be
would be
so scared.
Really hard. I mean, he's got his whatever
Right.
thing. I don't know how well Mandalorian helmets do in space, but
Well,
I don't
good
know if they're like space proof or not.
I think they are. I think they can be anyway. I don't know
Mhm.
if his is. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
unclear. But either way, I just loved the look of it. Like it's just this kind of like.
It was good.
Like you're on a crane and you're super high up, but it's reverse. It's like as if a crane was hanging underneath the world. It's the coolest looking thing. It's hard to even describe.
I know,
really.
Especially just it being everything is so dark, and then you see the stars, right?
Mhm.
So it's so much different than falling off like a cliff into whatever.
Well, it's like
this
a bottomless pit, basically.
Yeah, but it's like you're just falling off into like just dead space at this point. Like that's terrifying to me because you'll just keep going, right?
The physics of it are questionable, but
like okay, how does the gravity work?
How does the gravity work? But like I said,
yeah,
that doesn't necessarily matter. With
No, not
Star Wars,
really.
the artificial gravity, everything has Earth-like gravity all the time. So whatever.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter how big or small the planet is. It always has Earth-like gravity. It doesn't matter. Don't worry about that stuff.
I think they did say that it's around us. Isn't it around a star? Or I saw someone say that this whole thing.
But
so
like,
there's probably some gravity that's pulling you towards the star,
but not if you're in
but not
space.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Like
Yeah, I
anyway,
don't know.
it doesn't matter. It's just cool.
Yeah,
looking.
it's just cool looking. Yeah, exactly.
So he's walking along these kind of planks, these underbelly walkways, and he finds the armor we haven't seen since the Mandalorian. Was it season 2 or season 1 when he escapes and we don't see her again?
I think it's the end of season 1.
Right. Okay.
It's like the season finale of season 1.
Okay. So they escape.
I was
and
so pumped
with
to
the
see
help
her.
of all the Mandalorians, most of them get killed, which is very unfortunate. There's only 2 left. It's just her and Paz Vizsla.
Mm-hmm.
That's all that there is left, which is super depressing. So he collapses. Mando collapses because of his leg injury. Paz helps treat the wound, and he mentions that he thanks them for helping him escape from Navarro, and then the armor starts. This is where the lore stops and doesn't stop.
Yeah.
The armor asks what caused his wound, so he shows her the Darksaber. She talks about the Mandalorian heritage and the significance of the blade, which I think we're all familiar with here, but just the idea is that whoever wields it can rule all of Mandalore, which is what
Right.
Mando says here. And he's half right, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
So the armorer tells him that, about the blade and that it's cursed if it's not won in combat, essentially.
Right, yes.
Now, what's interesting is that at the end of Mandalorian Season 2, of course, he tries to give it to Bo-Katan and she refuses to take it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, we were like, what the hell, man? Like, at the end of the Clone Wars,
yeah,
Ahsoka just gives it to her,
or
right?
You mean Sabine?
Right, Sabine, sorry.
Yeah, and she has no problem taking it.
Yeah, she has no problem taking it,
mm-hmm.
right? And there's no issue there, right? And then she holds it up and everyone's like, woo, right?
Yes.
And we're like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Like, why? Like, what's the rule change? And then we were wondering the same thing about the helmets. Like, why these versions of the Mandalorians don't take their helmets off?
Yeah, exactly.
All this stuff. So all this stuff is explained here. So again, this is where it's like, if you hadn't been watching the Mandalorian, this would be confusing, I think, to you. So apparently, because of that decision that Bo-Katan makes to accept the Darksaber as a gift,
right,
that invokes this curse, which which they believe causes the Night of 1,000 Tears, this Great Purge.
Right. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so he basically says, if if someone doesn't earn it in combat, it'll cause the Mandalorian people to be scattered to the four winds.
Right.
We also learned that the hilt is made of Beskar, which I don't think we knew before, but is a cool little detail.
Yeah, I kind of like how he even says it's Beskar that he hasn't seen before, so it's different. Like, it's Beskar, but it's even a form that he hasn't seen. And then she explains that, oh yeah, like it was forged by a Jedi Mandalorian.
Which, of course, again, we know, but it's nice to have it re-explained here. And I think it's cool to have it explained in front of someone named Vizsla. So I think that's interesting, right?
Yes.
She talks about Tar Vizsla, who was that Jedi Mandalorian hybrid, and he's allowed back. Mandalorian's allowed back into the covert after revealing that he completed his quest to deliver Baby Yoda, Grogu, back to his own kind. Welcome back. Now there's 3, right?
Yeah.
So while setting up the forge that they had used to that they used to forge Beskar, Tar asked Mando how he got the Darksaber. You can kind of see
Paz.
Paz here. Yeah, sorry, Paz. He asked, he's kind of like prying a little bit,
Oh yeah. Well, the second he sees that Darksaber, you can obviously you can't see much because he has a helmet on, but you can tell he's very focused.
Well, he holds it in 2 hands when he delivers it to the armorer.
And even when the armorer gives it back to Mando, his gaze follows it. Like it's very he's very obviously extremely interested in it.
It's got a like Ring of Power type allure to it.
And I'm sure to a Vizsla, he probably has a little bit of like, that's my family. It's like, it belongs to me for sure.
Right. Has a what's his name from Lord of the Rings, who betrays the Fellowship? What the heck is his name? I'm sorry.
Smeagol.
I'm really upset I can't remember this. But anyway, in Fellowship of the Ring, one of the guys who betrays them because the ring, he's a man. The ring, he wants the power of the ring. It's kind of what I feel like
Ned
I'm getting
Stark?
at. No, well, yeah, yes, exactly, yes. Bean, Sean Bean.
Sean Bean, yeah.
Yes, I can't remember the character's name, but Sean Bean. It basically betrays them, and that's the same vibe I'm getting from Tar Vizsla.
Yeah, for sure.
So anyway, he's talking about where he got it, and he's saying that he defeated Moff Gideon in combat, right, to win it, right? So he's like, oh, okay. So what happened to Moff Gideon, right? He's like, well, he's not dead, but he will be. He was taken by the New Republic to be interrogated and tried for his crimes, right? And they're all like, well, I think he has the blood of millions of our kind on his hands. Death probably would have been justice in and of itself, right?
Yeah.
And I thought that was like, yeah, that's fair. I would understand why they would be. He should have probably just killed them, to be honest.
Yeah, probably.
But whatever. And he says like, well, hey, listen, if that's true, he'll be executed for his crimes, right?
Yeah.
Apparently, capital punishment still a thing in the New Republic.
You can't kill characters if you want to maybe give them a way to escape.
Well, you think Moff Gideon's going to escape?
Well, you never know. There's always that option, right?
I feel like it'd be way cooler if he was like a Hannibal Lecter type that they questioned.
For sure.
Yeah, but of course Hannibal also escapes. But you know what I mean.
But that's what I mean. Like if you just kill a character, then they're dead. But if you kind of leave it a little open ended, you have a little bit more to work with if you need it.
This is the mistake that the MCU was making early on in its life, where it was murdering all its coolest villains, and then you're like, oh well, I guess they can't come back, right?
Yeah.
And now they've kind of learned from their mistakes there, and some of the cooler villains now kind of reemerge every now and then. So we'll see about Moff Gideon. We'll see. He also, they're talking about this stuff, and he says that he'll be executed. The armorer talks about this mythosaur rising up and heralding a new age of Mandalore, but says, quote, sadly that only exists in legends,
right,
unquote. Which I think is just a fun, like, I don't want to say jab, but like nod to the old extended universe stuff.
Oh, I think it absolutely
Legends.
Is. Yeah,
right?
I think it absolutely is. Which is, I like it. It's cheeky, and it gives you that little bit. If you already know that they call them that, it gives you that little bit of like, oh, okay, I get it. Like it's.
Do you think? Did you take it as like a? It is obviously cheeky, but did you take it as kind of like, well, we're gonna keep that version of the lore as quote unquote legends, or do you think we're gonna see the mythosaur comes up a bunch of times in this episode? Do you think we're gonna see a mythosaur at some point?
That'd be so cool if we did. I think it'd be very, very cool if we did. I don't really know if it's canonized that they're extinct or not, or what happened to them. So, yeah, I mean, I think it'd be very cool if we could see that, or at least maybe like a really cool skeleton at some point, or
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe there's gonna be one in the mines of Mandalore.
yeah, the Mines of Moria. That's a good
Yeah.
point. We have a lot of Lord of the Rings crossover here.
Yeah.
So I just also thought that her cool like toolbox with like the mythosaur logo on it was like really dope. But she opens it up and her like hammer's in there, super cool. So here's the thing that is odd for me, and I think part of it is like this episode's jam packed with lore and exposition. Right now, typically that's not great, and it's hard to do well. I think most of this episode is done well, but there's some weird non sequiturs where it's just like someone's talking about something, and then all of a sudden we're talking about something entirely different, and it's like there's no natural segues, right? So they're talking about how Moff Gideon deserves to be tried for his crimes, and the next thing you know, she's talking about the mythosaur and it exists only in legends. You're like, what?
Right.
Okay. And the next thing you know, she that's off the table, and she's talking about where he got the Beskar spear, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So I think that's odd. There's another one that comes later when she asks, hey, did you take your helmet off? And it's like, why are you asking this now? It's very odd.
I think.
Why did
it's
you wait till this moment?
I think it's because of the duel that they just had. Why she asks that.
What do you mean? How does that explain why she would ask that?
Because I think it's about a little bit about winning the saber and being worthy of the saber and being a Mandalorian carrying it. So,
well, I mean, except for the fact that they let him leave with the dark saber, and
yeah,
he's,
I mean,
quote unquote, no longer Mandalorian, and
that's true.
There's been other characters who wielded who weren't Mandalorians as well.
No, yeah, it's true, but yeah,
I don't know. That would just feel like there's a weird non sequitur. Another one is this one where she's talking about the spear, and she's like, well, the pure existence of it, because it can pierce Mandalorian armor, makes it a threat to Mandalorians, so it needs to be melted down. Right. Which I think is a kind of a cool idea. Although it makes me think about, like, are you telling me that there's no Beskar weapons out there? That's not a thing. Like, what do you mean?
I feel like it is, because I think it means that Mandalorians before now were the ones that kind of controlled Beskar, right? I'm assuming it comes out of their minds.
But like, so in no time, so is at one point during the history of the Mandalorians, they're thousands of years, they're like, no more weapons, or there was weapons and then they stopped making them, or like, what's the deal there?
The way that I was thinking about it was like, okay, why would you make something like, you're making this armor for a reason, and that reason is to fight Jedi, because you need something that can protect you against lightsabers. So why would you make a weapon that could then be used against you to kill you, when you're specifically making
what I'm wondering is like, what that's like saying, oh well, hey, we made our armor out of steel, so you can't make your swords out of steel. You know, like, what's stopping someone from who knows how to work the armor, the metal, into making it into a weapon? Like, to me,
there's
it's
no
like
stopping it, but I understand why Mandalorians wouldn't want that. It's maybe other people would, but yeah.
Yeah, I understand it too, but it just raises a lot, to me, it raises a lot of weird questions about, like, how that is this something that she just believes, or is this something that all Mandalorians believe, or what's the, because, like,
well, they are very.
Mando didn't seem to blink an eye when he got that spear. So
no, for sure. I think it's probably a little bit more her specific zealoty sect of Mandalorians.
It's her specifically saying, okay, yeah, this can't be allowed to.
Especially her being like an armorer. She's like, no, like, Beskar was made or meant for just armor. Like, it's blasphemous to be making weapons out of something that can now penetrate the armor I worked so hard to make.
Right, that's fair. So anyway, it really doesn't bother me that much. It was just something that came to mind. So anyway, she decides that she's gonna melt it down. He tells her that he got it as a gift from a Jedi, and they use it to defeat Gideon because he can block a lightsaber. And so she starts melting it down. Mando asks her if she's ever heard, and this is another non sequitur. She's just like, "Hey, have you ever heard of Bo-Katan Kryze?" And she's like, it's a cautionary tale. And he tells her, and she tells him the story of how she tried to rule Mandalore based only on her blood and the sword, right?
Right.
And that she had not won it by creed. So this is I love the nuance here. It explains why we had those questions last season.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it does so in a satisfying way, at least for me. Was it satisfying
Oh,
to
it
hear
was
that for you?
super. Yeah, like I liked it being explained and not in a spoon-fed to us
Well, it
way.
does like it is kind of spoon-fed, but like
I don't
it
think so.
feels just like the way she does it. The actress who plays
Yeah.
Swan, I think is her name, something Swan, Emily Swallow, not a swan, different bird. So I think she's great here. I think she just has really good
Yeah.
presence, and her voice is very cool. So she talks about how it explains the whole thing, but it's like, and she really is recounting stuff if you've been watching Clone Wars and stuff, the stuff that you already know.
Of course.
So in some senses, it is just kind of being delivered to you, but it's done so in a very, I think, stylish way. So
it is,
works.
yeah. And she explains it very well. And I like her calling it a cautionary tale. Like she's not immediately like, oh yeah, fuck Bo-Katan. Like she ruined Mandalore. Like it's
Right.
very much about it being like, it's a curse, and she did that, and I feel like now Bo-Katan probably believes about that curse too.
She feels very sad about it because obviously
Yes.
she lost the world. She says she was born of a mighty house. They
Mhm.
lost their way and we lost our world.
Yes, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think, in context, I mean, this is all obviously everyone's perspective is slightly different, but and this is obviously coming out of the mouth of someone who was, I think, obviously at this point, what's it called? The
Death Watch?
Death Watch.
Death Watch, yeah.
Who was obviously Death Watch, right? So she has a very
Absolutely,
specific
she was.
view of how the world should work if you're Mandalorian and all that kind of stuff. So it's hard to balance that. And of course, you have Bo-Katan. Her sister had a very different view, right? And she tries to take this balanced approach of being of this warrior mentality, but also using diplomacy. And it's not the only. She tries to balance it, but
right.
And it all falls apart on her, and we don't really know. So she says that her rule ended in tragedy, but we don't know the story of that. We don't know how that happened.
No, exactly.
I'm sure we will get to see it at some point. I don't know if it'll be flashback in live action or we'll see it in some animated show. Whatever, maybe in the Rebels sequel, whatever that is. And so that's interesting. That like opens up an interesting story to tell. But you get the impression that you don't necessarily have to believe that it's an actual curse so much as just it's really hard to try to change this world. The Empire didn't help, obviously.
Yeah.
So and that kind of takes us to her, but where she says, hey, if we weren't cloistered away on the moon of Concordia, which is how we already knew they were Death Watch from last season's flashbacks and stuff like that, but now we definitely know because that's where Death Watch was, right? Yes. And that allowed them to survive the Great Purge, and now we get an actual flashback. Now this is crazy, okay?
Yes.
Absolutely nuts. So we see the moon in question, Concordia, is in the sky, and then it pans down to reveal Mandalore in live action for the first time. And like I saw a tweet before I'd even seen the episode. I kind of wish I hadn't, but I just caught a glimpse of it, and I kind of looked away. It said, we get to see Mandalore for live action for the first time, but at what cost? But at what cost? And so we see TIE bombers, hundreds of them, dropping these ordnance onto the planet, and mushroom clouds. It makes me think. Now I think it's not explicit, and they don't talk about nukes explicit. Like it's nuclear weapons or atom bombs and that kind of stuff are sometimes referenced in Star Wars. Very rarely.
Okay.
The term nuclear weapon is used very rarely. But it certainly looks like nuclear weapons, and then the way that they have, like, first of all, it's a couple things. This is obviously a homage to Terminator, like in every way, like the way that like they have the K2 droids and the Viper droids, and the way that they pan the camera and everything. It's just all very Judgment Day Terminator stuff. So, and I think a lot of the decisions for this flashback are based around how can we pay homage to Terminator first, and less about how does this make sense in the world necessarily. although I think it does. So
It does make
mushroom
sense to
clouds,
me, yeah.
obviously, in Judgment Day, on Terminator, they are nuclear bombs. Here, they certainly look like them. The explosions are huge. It's crazy. Like, they're massive. Nothing really we know, as far as I'm concerned, are I've never seen it. We can't conceive of a bigger explosion than an atom bomb, and
No.
that's kind of what we're seeing here.
Well, I mean,
And
outside of like the Death Star, but
well, yeah, but the Death Star explosion, which is kind of just like a big poof, and it's
but
like
that's like a
gone.
planet killer. Like it just vaporizes it,
Oh, right,
basically. Like
exactly.
it's
Yeah,
not.
that's true.
Yeah.
It's not a bomb, and
No.
like so. And I think we're like this. I've heard people saying like, "Hey, this is just like the regular TIE bomber ordnance." I disagree. I don't think that's the case. You know, when we saw TIE bombers bombing that
No.
asteroid in Empire, when they're trying to find the Millennium Falcon, and they're just like these little blue, like proton bombs or whatever, and this is different. It's obviously different. It's really
I think it's
devastating.
also. I feel like it's different for a reason too. Like
Right.
obviously, Mandalore was a huge threat. And so much of a threat that the Empire couldn't just do what they normally do, where it's
Mhm.
like using force or using their, you
Right,
know,
because they're too militarized. It wouldn't
yeah,
work. Right.
exactly. It's like there's too much going on. Like there's too many. So it was just like, nope, this is like total planet kill without having to destroy the entire planet because they want the
Right.
Beskar, I
They
think.
want the best card. You're right. So
Yeah.
this is like a middle ground. I think that's a great point.
Yeah. It's like a
Um,
complete organic kill.
we're just gonna kill every single thing that's on here on this planet that's not a piece of metal that we need.
Exactly.
Right. So I really love. So we see this. Like, it's just explosion after explosion. Um, it certainly looks. I think it's cool that they shot it at night because, as I said before, Mandalore during the daytime is boring to look at.
Yeah.
It's just a desert, right? And so we even see. I think it's not clear. It's not 100% guaranteed, but we know that the capital of Mandalore is Sundari. That's the place that we saw all that action happen at the end of the Siege of Mandalore, at the end of Clone Wars, and I'm pretty sure that's what explodes at the end.
I think so. Yeah, it's like their domed city
Yeah,
there.
it's their dome city. It's really cool. So that's all exploded. The narration over here says those born of Mandalore strayed from their path. Eventually, the Imperial interlopers destroyed all that we know and loved in the Night of a Thousand Tears. So this is our first glimpse of that "quote unquote" Night of a Thousand Tears, the Great Purge. It
Right.
has a couple names, right? It's really cool looking, just
Ugh.
also quite sad.
It's just devastating. Yeah, you see
Yeah.
like the Mandalorian helmets laying on the
Oh,
ground.
yeah,
and,
it's like the skulls.
yeah.
Again, that's just like the skulls from Terminator. So
Yeah.
like it's just like it's just the coolest Terminator homage I've ever seen.
Mhm.
And it's in Star Wars. Like, oh my god, like hook it to my
Yeah.
veins. You know?
Well, and see, like, and that's the other part of it of like, I don't understand why people wouldn't think it was something like as bad as an atom bomb because there's no stormtroopers there. There's no, it's all droids
Right. It's all
because they
droids. That's it.
can't
Yes.
send
Exactly.
humans. Yeah.
There's radiation. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, no, it's messed up. They did something really messed up, and it was so bad that they could only send droids there to collect Beskar, like from the dead bodies, basically, of the
Right.
Mandalorians,
Yeah.
which is fucked.
Oof. Yeah.
Yeah, like Empire's
It's-
bad. It gives you like the shivers, like you're just
Well,
like,
it's like
oh, like
you
that's
gotta be like,
terrible.
how do you and the thing is, what's even crazy? It's like so Gideon was responsible for it. He kind of
Yes.
talks about that, the Great Purge and the Night of a Thousand Tears with kind of like this, like a little bit of
Yeah.
glee. Like I don't know how you what kind of terrible person you'd have to be be like, yeah, just nuke the whole planet.
Well, exactly, and like that's also why I think Bo-Katan is like I want him, like I want to kill him because she's
Right.
like look what this person did. Like that's not even in terms of Star Wars and
He
war
probably made
and-
her watch. Like
Oh,
that's how
probably.
crazy.
Honestly,
Yeah.
probably. Like probably fought her, had her on her ship, was like, oh yeah, you can watch this happen. Just like horrendous, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's like there's some bad guys in Star Wars, and then there's like really
Then there's
bad
like
guys.
those like Gideon. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really
Yeah.
messed up. So anyway, really cool flashback sequence. Cutting back to the armor, and so she says, "The only those who walked the way escaped the curse prophesied in the creed.
Mm-hmm.
Though our numbers were scattered to the winds, our adherence to the way has preserved our legacy for the generations to come, until we can one day return to our home world."
Right. No,
Um,
I have a
obviously,
question.
she reads it better than I do. Yeah, go ahead.
So when she talks about those who walk the way and basically Death Watch on the moon, I still think that there is like a separate extra little pocket of them that are like her, like this is the way,
Oh,
more
so you're saying
religious
that there
zealots.
was like there was Death Watch, and then there was um these
I
extra Death
A little
Watch
bit
people,
more because it's like
because
from what we
even
saw,
Death
like
Watch took their helmets off.
that's
That
what I
was
mean.
yeah.
Yeah, and I mean this is before that was kind of brought in, so give it what you want. But I do think that even her, I don't know what you want to call them because I guess they're Death Watch, and I have seen.
They're religious zealots. That's what
Yeah,
they
like they're
are.
basically
Right.
exactly because I think that's what Bo-Katan calls them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they're a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yes.
They're
Mm-hmm.
Death Watch, but even a little bit more like ooh, like yeah, they're still a
They're
little
the
crazier.
extreme
Extremists, yeah, on the
they're the extreme religious zealots. They take, everything is the Bible is
is as
literal,
it's said.
everything
Yes.
exactly. So it's like, that
Even though
stuff
they're Death
is,
Watch, I still think they're even like a little bit more than even Death Watch was.
well, I think maybe, and like more is maybe not the right word. Just they're just a little bit more. They're a little different. Like
Yeah, a
Death
little
Watch
bit
had a
more.
very
I don't know.
specific agenda, and they kind of saw things in a specific way. These people, the armorer and wherever she came from, where I would love to see at some point, is like
Yeah, like I.
it's a whole different kind of mentality. They're
That's
like
the thing.
they almost like believed in like living on the moon because that was like the right thing to do and all this other, like,
Mhm.
I don't know, like it's interesting
I kind of want to
anyway.
see the difference between like actual Death Watch and then like
Or like
them.
what happened? Did they split out? Were they all together and then they split
Yeah.
off at one point because
So
there was a
it's
difference in opinion? I don't
interesting
know.
because I
Yeah.
have seen people like talk about the little like horn she has on her helmet and kind of refer that to like the Maul side of Death
Yes,
Watch
and
too, which I
it
don't.
does look
We'll
pretty
see.
cool. If you
Hmm.
ask me, that would be a cool like connection. I'm there
Yeah,
for that. Let's
but
just
at
put
the
it that
same
way.
time, I
Yeah.
feel like she wouldn't follow someone who wasn't
I
Mandalorian.
don't. I agree.
So yeah,
I would agree.
but
Right,
we'll
but
see. Yeah,
I don't know. Who knows?
maybe.
Maybe she got caught up into it. Now she's like he
Yeah.
has a different approach. Anyway, so we cut back to the armor. They had this whole the sad thing, and then again this after this tragic flashback, another non sequitur. She asks what she should forge again. He
Love
says he
this.
wants something for a foundling,
Oh, it's so
a
good.
specific one. He wants something for Grogu. He wants to make a little present. She's, I think, at first surprised because she's like, well, Grogu's no longer in your care.
Right.
He's back with his own kind. And then there's I think this really cool moment where she's like, the Jedi need to forgo attachment so they can learn the ways of the Force. Like,
Right.
she understands that as like she obviously understands. She's very worldly, apparently. And Mando's like, well, that's the opposite of our creed. Loyalty
Yeah.
and solidarity are the way. And I just love how she's kind of like, you're smarter than you look, Din.
Hmm.
Okay, fair enough. That is a compelling argument. You've used my own
Yeah.
words against me, and I will allow it.
Yeah. I really fuck, I like this whole exchange. As soon as he asked for foundling thing, I wanted it to be like a tiny little Mando helmet.
Doesn't I don't know if that
I don't think
with
it
little
is.
with spot for ears to poke out. I don't know.
I wanted to have little metal ears.
There's no
To fill his
way. There's
ears.
no
I think it'd
way.
be so cute.
It would not be cute if it would look ridiculous.
I will die.
It would look
If
absolutely
Grogu
ridiculous.
is in a little metal Mandalorian suit, I will die happy. But I think it's like chainmail.
It is chainmail. It's
yeah.
100% chainmail. And by the
Which is
way,
kinda
chainmail
cool.
is a really cool idea.
Yeah, for
For
something different, like a Jedi
Yeah.
is kind of cool to have like a chainmail that he could put under his robes, maybe. Or,
Right.
You know?
Exactly. Yes, I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
So,
And it protects him against lightsabers, so it's also that. Like I think
lightsabers and blaster fire, and like
Yeah.
it's a smart, practical present.
So exactly, I think Mando is just thinking like I want him to be protected, like he's going to be a Jedi, and I want him to be protected against everything, right? So
What about
it's very sweet.
what about when it comes? She like packages up into a little bag that looks like his head.
It looks like his head. It's so cute. Ugh, that kind of stuff gets me. I
think
loved
it's
it.
like it's a little on the nose. Like, do really like he's like reminded of Grogu left and right,
Oh.
and he's got this little like, come on. I think that's funny.
I
Right.
loved it. I thought it was adorable.
So we then have this like weird transition, and it looks like some time has passed because I guess his leg is feeling a little bit better. And Mando is training with the Darksaber with the armorer, and she's calling out numbers in Mandoa, which is, I guess, a lost Mandalorian language.
Mm-hmm.
Or I guess it's not lost. It's obviously not entirely lost, but not really spoken anymore.
Well, we hear it in Rebels apparently.
Do we when?
When Kanan is training with Sabine, teaching her how to use the saber.
I thought I thought he was just I thought he was just calling out 1, 2, 3, 4 in
Was he? I
Galactic
thought.
Basic.
Oh, maybe. I thought she was saying it. I thought I saw someone say that they use the Mando language, or she was saying the ones.
I think they were comparing that she's calling out numbers here, and that's what Kanan was doing with Sabine. That's
my bad. I misunderstood.
Right. I don't know if we've heard Mandoa before. It's referenced. It's like comes from like video games or role playing games or something like that. So anyway, she's 1 through 4. Right, the different like positions, right, different motions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really cool. I love how he's going and then he falls off the platform.
Yeah, I know.
And then he just flies back up with a jetpack. So that's cool. So that kind of answers our question from before, I guess.
Yeah.
So and then he just starts talking about how he feels like the blade is getting heavier with each move, which is a concept that I had not thought of before. I've never considered that.
Yeah, which it makes sense when you go back and watch him fighting with it in the meat shop. It looks like it's getting heavier every time he swings it. Sabine also says that when she's training with it too.
She says it feels heavy.
That it's heavy, yeah. And Kanan it's it's a heavy weapon, and it's because you've got to connect with it. It's about it was made by a Force user, so it's
Mm-hmm. I think that's a really fascinating idea. I've never thought about the idea that the lightsaber itself would fight against the user if there wasn't connection between the user and the kyber crystal.
It's like the Elder Wand. Okay. In Harry Potter.
I saw that in my Screen Crush
in my defense,
rewatch thing.
I said that before I watched the Screen Crush thing because Adam and I were talking about the
right, and they're like, "Oh, look, the Elder Wand," and
and I was like, "See, it's the Elder Wand." I was like, I said the same thing today.
So there you go. You get that one. You can own that one.
Because we were talking about how who actually technically would have the rights to the Darksaber, chronologically what we see, because Sabine just finds it on Dathomir, and it would be Ahsoka because Ahsoka defeated Maul. When Maul
well, we don't know what happened between that time and but we don't know how that
Ahsoka
works,
was the last person to defeat Maul when he
but we don't know. But we also don't know what happened with the blade in that 10-year span.
That's true. I guess someone else could have beat him up.
Yeah, there's other things that could have happened.
Yeah, it's true.
So And I don't think it's necessarily connected to. I don't think it's only connected to one person.
No, I don't think so.
I think it just
has a loyalty.
Exactly. It just needs to. You as a user need to connect with it in some way, right? Mm-hmm. So he's not, obviously. She talks about how he's fighting the weapon, he's fighting the blade, and he should be fighting his opponent, right?
Right.
And if he tries to fight the blade, he's too weak, and the blade will win, right? Which I think is a really, again, fascinating, kind of cool, almost magical. Fantasy concept. Of course, we mentioned already. This calls back to when Kanan was training Sabine, which is a really. I think I should go back and rewatch that episode. I think he says it's old and a powerful weapon, something along those lines.
Yeah.
So he wants to go again. He's like, okay, I'm not getting it, but let me go again. I love all the details, by the way. Like anytime the blade touches anything, it's cutting it or melting it or something.
Yeah.
Like he's trying to pick it up and he's like cutting a hole in the plank as he tries
in the floor. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just really cool. And she says that your body is strong, but your mind is distracted, and that I love this line, by the way, which is like this kind of like patience without insight will lead to the same outcome, which is like that you try something over and over again without changing anything.
Yeah,
it's like the definition of insanity kind of thing.
Definition of insanity. Yeah,
yeah. I love that. I just persistence without insight will lead to the same outcome is a brilliant line. I know that it's being reworked from that same idea, but it's just the way it's being executed.
I really like that too. I thought it was a very cool way to re-say that, but in a different way. It was really good.
Because it's funny because I think about this I think about that idea all the time, where it's like, if no one tells me how to do this the right way, I'm just going to keep messing it up. It doesn't matter how many times I try to do, when I'm trying to learn a new skill in hockey, for instance. If no one gives me pointers or what I'm doing wrong or whatever, I'm gonna keep going down a path of failure.
Yeah,
and it won't change unless I've given new information. So.
Well, for sure, and frustration and all that, which I'm assuming Mando was feeling because he's frustrated that this blade won't work, and he's getting a lot of cryptic shit here. He's
Yeah,
not really
right.
getting any. But hey,
Right, like which
maybe.
insight are you providing here, other than your
Well,
body is strong, but your mind is distracted,
yeah,
right?
but maybe we'll see him go to Grogu, and then maybe a Jedi can kind of give him some pointers. And be
Well,
like,
and maybe
no,
this is like here's something this just came to mind. This is a really cool idea that I've never thought of before. You know how we talk about how even in this episode she says that to learn the ways of the Force, Jedi must forgo attachment,
mm-hmm.
right? And he's talking and she's saying like, hey, your body's strong, but your mind is distracted.
Yeah,
So he's distracted by his attachment to Grogu, right?
exactly. Yeah,
That's what's causing him to fail with the blade. So maybe there's a connection between your ability to connect with your blade, your lightsaber, and your willingness to be detached from distraction.
yeah, absolutely.
I think that's a cool connection there.
Mm-hmm. He's got to learn a little bit of Jedi
Right.
training.
Maybe you should do some meditation.
Yeah.
Have you tried that? Okay, so where were we? Okay, yeah. So they basically give up. Hearing this, Paz Vizsla suggests that it may belong, maybe it needs to belong to someone else, And he reminds Din that, it was his ancestor who forged it originally, and so he challenges him to a duel, right? And I love how he's like, you did win it in combat, right? He's like,
Yeah.
he's like, yeah, I did. And he's like, well, as per the rules, then I challenge you.
Yeah,
he's
we're
like, okay,
fighting.
fair, all right. And so, and the I like how the armorer is like, do you accept the duel? And he's like, yeah, of course. This little punk, who's huge. By the way, if you're not aware, Paz Vizsla is played by Jon Favreau. He does not get a credit in this.
Oh, he doesn't.
Well, not an acting credit because he has other credits in this.
Oh,
he's already a producer
I see.
and a writer.
I was curious if they have somebody else doing the stunts. Or if he's just doing the voice and they have a different person in the suit. Because
I don't know. It sure looks like Jon Favreau, like body shape.
See, but and I was kind of trying to figure that out because I'm like, okay, like Jon Favreau is like a big guy, but he's more
a big
like
guy.
He's a chubby dude, right? So
yeah,
no offense to Jon Favreau, but like, and this Mandalorian looks a little bit like a little more
hefty.
Jacked.
Well, it's hard to tell underneath the armor.
It's hard to tell under the armor.
Yeah.
But I mean, like when Boba put his armor on the first time.
Yes, that's true. He did look very chubby.
He looked kind of like ill-fitting.
But this armor is designed to fit someone of that body
of that
type,
one's size. So. Yeah, no, for sure. So I was just kind of like, I wonder if it's like a different person or if it is him because it's hard to tell in the whole Mandalorian suit. But because he looks, I don't know how tall is Jon Favreau in real life.
I don't know, but it's almost certainly someone doing the stunts for him, but
yes,
I think he's probably, when it's just like dialogue scenes or whatever, I bet you he's under there.
Yeah, because he looks huge, like tall too.
I think Jon Favreau's pretty big guy. I think he's a pretty big guy.
Oh, is he tall? Okay, yeah. Because I was like, even with Din Djarin, like he looks slight and short compared to this other dude.
Jon Favreau height.
It's gonna give you it in meters, and we can't.
1.85 meters, whatever that means.
That's over 6 feet, I think.
Hold on. Hey Siri, convert 1.85 meters to feet.
Just put Jon Favreau height in feet, and it'll
6.7 feet.
So 6'7"? No.
6.07.
Oh, 6.07. Okay.
So he's like just over 6 feet.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, I think like 1.8 is 6 feet. So.
Well, I don't know how meters work with height.
Yeah, me neither.
I can measure meters.
We're supposed to know. We're Canadian.
Upwise.
But
yeah, but don't worry about it. Anyway, so there's a fight sequence here, and I love that it's on this like thin plank, very like Mortal Kombat style, like 2D fighter.
Yeah,
I think that's really cool. They each remove their jetpacks, which I think is like a kind of this like kind of cool Western standoff style.
Mm-hmm.
And then they, Mando pulls out the Darksaber and Paz pulls out a vibroblade and a shield generator on his arm, which is really dope, and also reminds me of the Battlefront 2 and stuff like that. You see those kind of shields, arm shields. So the fight sequence is, I think, pretty cool. It's not that long, but there's some like cool moments in it where like Paz is kind of using his like strength to overpower him.
Right.
It looks like Mando's gonna lose with like Paz kind of picking up the Darksaber and kind of trying to wield it, but also looks very heavy for him too.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And Mando uses his own vibroblade. He kind of gets in close and finishes him off. He has him at knife point. I love when Paz tried to like block the saber with his own blade and just cuts it in half.
It just cuts it in half, hey? Yeah.
That's fun stuff.
Super good. I like somebody referred to like the the way Mando kind of ends up winning is
Hmm.
called like death by 1,000 cuts or
Yeah, well,
something.
he's
Because
like getting him in the chin and
yeah,
he's
because he
getting him in like the
slices
back
them
of the
all
thing.
over,
Yeah,
and then yeah, it's basically like the reason Paz loses because he won't drop the saber. Like he could have
yeah,
kept fighting without it, but he wouldn't. And, yeah.
right. Um, Mando wins and has at knife point, and then for some reason the armorer asks if they've ever removed their helmets,
Yeah.
and Mando reveals that he has removed it after this like pregnant pause where he's like,
Hmm.
she's like, you have to tell me, and he's like, oh shit, he should have just
Yeah.
lied to her.
Yeah. I don't think he
No,
could.
because here's
Which
the thing.
is, yeah, I don't know.
For me, it's like this is all about trying to like he left this group. He got Grogu and he went on this long
Yes.
adventure and he grew as a person. And he's trying to
Hmm.
return to the you can never that saying you can never go home again. Ever heard that?
Right, right. Yes.
He tries to go back to this and it's not really fitting as he used to because in his mind he was 100% justified for removing his helmet. You know,
Oh yeah,
a couple
100%.
times to make to kind of complete his mission.
Yeah,
So
he kind of had to. So
right, he took it off at least. I'm thinking, okay, at least twice, maybe three, once in season 1, twice in season 2. So, um,
yeah,
so and it looked like he was getting more used to it, especially as he was meeting other Mandalorians who did and
yeah, which
stuff
was
like
kind of
that.
interesting. Why
Yeah.
he's a little bit more reverting back to,
Well, where else would you go?
you know.
What
I don't know. Like it's, I
I
kind of
thought
thought
he'd
he.
be hanging out with Bo-Katan and
That's
stuff.
kind of what I thought, but I guess maybe not. I don't know. I mean, I guess we'll see. It's kind of his whole journey of sort of finding himself and figuring out what
Hmm.
kind of Mando he wants to be, I guess. But it's just interesting to me that it seems like it matters to him again when it I kind of seemed like he
I
was
think
letting that go a little bit, but
yeah, I think he's trying it on. He's kind of like,
yeah,
hey,
yeah.
well, I know this. I'm comfortable with this. Can I go back to that? And I guess the
Right.
answer is no, right?
Yes. Well,
And
it's maybe it's you got to
it's
go
a
to the
maybe, right?
yeah.
And I love how, by the way, he's like, okay, well, please forgive me. And she's like, the only way to redeem yourself is in the living waters in the mines beneath Mandalore. Whatever the living waters means, whatever, doesn't matter.
Cool.
And
I
he's
hope
like,
he goes there.
but the mines have been all destroyed, is what what he says to her. And I love her response, which is like, this is the way. That's
Yeah.
the only. Well, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
Like, listen, I don't make the rules. You
You got to
know,
go back there. Go
you got to
dig
go
them up.
back there, right?
Yeah.
And I just and by the way, I love when she's like, you're a Mandalorian no more, right? And he's like, well, what do I do? And then John Favreau
Yeah.
is like, leave, apostate.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
know.
just like turns on him so fast.
Immediately.
He'd already kind of turned on him anyway. No,
Oh,
so
yeah.
apostate, a person who renounces a religious or political belief or principle.
Mhm.
Quote, after 50 years as an apostate, he returned to the faith.
Right.
That's the definition of what apostate is. So I just think I love when people use that type of terminology in like
Yeah,
in pop culture
it
and
was
stuff.
pretty
It's cool.
cool. Mhm.
Yeah. So anyway, he leaves and the armor doesn't even look at him.
Yeah.
Do you get the impression that she's kind of like she's upset, like she's not happy about this? She kind of like she wishes she
Mhm.
could forgive him, but
No.
it's just not possible.
No,
You
I
know?
don't I think she's very emotionless. I don't think she really.
Really
Yeah,
interesting.
my feeling from her is everything's very cut
By
and
the book,
dry.
right?
It's this is the way. It's like, yep, you've done this. Now this happens. If you want to fix it, do this. It's like I don't think she has a lot of emotion
I
really. And
think I don't think
know
I don't
this
know.
emotion, but
I get the and it's hard to tell because you don't see her face ever. But
mhm.
the way I think the way she deals with Din is a little different. She
Yeah.
kind of gives him a little bit of a little bit of leeway, and tries to guide him and hopes he makes the right decisions.
Yeah.
I think she feels a little disappointed in him, but I get the impression
Maybe,
that she's
yeah.
not like she's not completely emotionless. I don't get that
Fair enough.
impression.
Yeah, I maybe not emotionless is a bad word or a bad way to explain it, but I just get a very like I don't know, maybe kind of like stoic and
Well,
she's
that's
just
true.
she's just not overly I don't think she feels overly any one way about it kind of
Right.
thing,
Well, I mean,
like
she
a little
doesn't
bit
look
more
at him. Doesn't look at him.
like a neutral sort of priest type way, right? Where
Right.
it's you go to a priest and you confess your sins and yada yada and they tell you what you can do to atone for them,
Right.
right? So
3 Hail Marys and
yeah, I get a little bit more of that where she's not necessarily judging him. She's just stating the way it is and what he needs to do if he wants to be welcomed back, kind of
right.
thing. So, Because she could,
Um,
if she was upset about it, she could just be like, nope, there's nothing. Bye. Like,
well, I guess, yeah. I mean, she's not, I don't think she's not upset so much as she's just, I think, disappointed.
yeah, fair enough.
So he leaves, and we see Mando boarding a transport to Tatooine, and he is stopped by a security droid, and this is like the same type of droid that you see on Star Tours and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there's a connection to what they're doing at Disney World and all that stuff. I don't care necessarily, but it's just a fun like Earth analog where it's like you have the indignity of having to remove your shoes and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you have to check your weapons.
Yeah, exactly. So he has to check all his weapons, and I just like there. This is the first time we've seen this, but like this idea, it reminds me a little bit of like the Matrix when you kind of reveal how he walks through that the metal detector and he's got all those guns on him or whatever.
Yeah,
it's kind of like that, where it's like he's got you're pulling out all your weapons, the knives from different places, and the guns from different places. I think it's such a fun little like gag, basically.
It is.
Where he's got removes all of his whistling birds, and he's got the Darksaber. He's got a sidearm. He's got another sidearm. He's got his rope. He has to remove his rope from his like all that stuff.
Hook. Yeah. I love this. It kind of like reminds me. I feel like we see these scenes every once in a while in, like a gangster movie or something else where someone has to take all their weapons out before they go talk to the big boss, and like they have so much stuff on them that you're like, okay,
right.
this
and
is
then they still have one hidden somewhere. Yeah.
Did you think his stuff was going to get stolen?
Well, so here's the thing. Like I was like, why even show us this if there's not going to be any repercussion to it? And he's like, I know everything that's in here, right? And then he goes and he gets it, and he's all there.
Yeah.
Immediately, if that's the case, I'm like, okay, well maybe then it's just a fun gag and it's over. The one other thing is like we didn't see him use the Darksaber after. Maybe there's a replica. It's been swapped out for a fake.
Maybe
unlikely.
But no, I just thought it was funny because as soon as I saw him doing that, I'm like, you idiot! I'm like, he loses
you shouldn't,
all of his stuff.
You're like, just talk about how important the Darksaber is. You're just gonna leave it with this droid. Okay.
That's what I thought. I was like, I'm gonna be so pissed off if he loses all of his stuff right now.
Well, it would be very cool video game style to do that.
It's like, oh, you've lost all your things now. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I like how the droid's like, you can talk to my supervisor. I'm happy to book you on tomorrow's flight.
Tomorrow, and he's just like, okay, whatever.
He's like, oh, all right. So that's good stuff. And so he places all his weapons in the secure case, including the saber. Aboard the flight, we see another astromech serving drinks. By the way, same astromech serving drinks as the one in the bar. I could tell from the markings, the coloring. Okay?
Yeah, just
give it a paint job at least. Come on, guys. All right. So there's an astromech serving drinks, and then he's getting all sad, and then he sees this young green Rhodian that I guess reminds him of Grogu, and he pulls up a little present he has, and he's like, "Oh, I miss you." So, and then I just like it. They introduced this like Starliner commercial travel 2 episodes ago, and I thought that's a cool design ship. And then I just didn't think we'd see it again so soon, but I guess it makes sense. You reuse the model, so.
I kind of like seeing
aboard.
what commercial travel looks like in Star Wars. It's kind of neat. You never really see it. You always see people being like, "Oh, okay, we're hopping on this freighter," or
they already have their own ship.
Someone's ship, but we don't just see like normal, regular day travel.
Like what's the bus? Like what's the bus look like?
It's super cool. We're like, okay, that makes sense that there would just be like a literal not everyone has ships. Like, oh, you want to go to Tatooine? Got to catch the 10:30 bus.
Non-stop service to Tatooine.
Very cool.
So we get to Tatooine, and by the way, there's like half of the episode is already gone by this point, and you're like, what a crazy, like, are we, is Boba Fett even going to appear? The answer is no, but we didn't know that at that time. So as he's deplaning, he retrieves all his weapons. Nothing appears to be missing. And it doesn't appear that he's like coming off the same flight that we saw from 2 weeks ago, from 2 episodes ago, because that, I mean, I could see the fun bit there where he's like, oh yeah, this is the same flight. We just didn't see that from our perspective when we were dealing with it. But I don't think that's the case, and especially when it says nonstop service. So like there could be flights coming in every day. So
yeah, of course.
Anyway, so he comes off the ship, and then we cut to Peli Motto's garage. We see a BD droid. How cool is that?
Oh, so cool.
Very cute, similar to the one we see from Jedi Fallen Order.
Yeah.
Not clear I guess if it's the same droid.
I think that'd be a little bit ridiculous.
It would
if
be
it was.
stupid, I think. I agree.
Yeah, like not every droid needs to be a droid we've seen somewhere else. Like
Yeah.
I like for sure. I like these little things like, oh haha, that's cute. Like he looks like the other BD droid. Like
Yeah.
that's fine. But I feel like it'd be a little bit ridiculous if it's the exact same
Yeah,
droid.
that would be. Although it does have a lot of the same mannerisms, but
It
I mean, maybe they
does.
all do. So it's anyway. So he's being attacked by a womp rat.
Yeah.
Pelly is, and by the way, we've never seen a real womp rat before. This is the first one.
Yeah.
First mentioned in A New Hope, and we've never seen them. So this is the first time. You know, he does mention they're not much bigger than 3 meters, which was I always thought was big. I was
That's
like
huge.
Yeah, I know, right? But remember, because in A New Hope, he's like, you know, we used to bullseye womp rats back in my T16. They're not much bigger than 3 meters, you know.
Yeah, it's
and I was like, that's really big. And so it turns out they are really big. They're just giant rats.
So disgusting.
So Pelly's chasing it. She's got her droids with her. She's asking the droids for help, but they kind of refuse. And I like,
they're just
by
like
the way,
covering their eyes.
By the way, I like when they're like, "What do you mean you can't say no?
Yeah.
What is this, a democracy?" And which obviously raises the whole like question mark around like droid rights in Star Wars, which is a big murky subject that I choose not to get into on a very regular basis. For whatever reason, Solo decided it was going to make that a whole subplot of its whole movie. But,
right, yes.
Right. Anyway, so he it looks like Pelly's like getting like about to be eaten.
Yeah.
In this like classic like horror sequence where it's like she's being like pulled back, but it's all being played for laughs.
Mm-hmm.
And then Mando shows up and shoots it, saves her. And then she's like, "Hey, look, everyone, Mando's here!" And then all the droids are like, "Bwah, bwah."
Yeah.
I love that.
I love when they make sad droid noises.
Well, they're just like, who cares?
Yeah.
Like, look, more danger.
They're
Great.
so mean to them beforehand.
Yeah. Although Mando's nice to droids, so I don't really know what they're complaining about. She's the one who's mean to them.
He wasn't nice to them the first time he met them.
Well, that's true. He
shot at them and told them to get away from his stuff. Like he was just like, no droids. Like,
well, actually, you know what? That's a good point. I'm sorry, I misspoke.
Yeah, I was like, what are you talking about?
He had a whole like.
I was like,
phobia.
the whole first season, he hated droids.
He hates no droids. Yeah, I remember that now. Yeah.
He likes them.
So okay, yeah, fair enough. He's growing as a person. Okay?
Yeah.
And Mando's here. Womp womp. Anyway, so she asks, why he's there, which I think is a funny question, right? It's like, what do you mean? What do you? I got your message. You called me. Like, and she's like, oh yeah, of course, yeah, no, replacement for the Razor Crest, of course. And she's like playing it cool. It's like, oh, do you bring the money? and then she's like, do you mind if I count it? It's not because I don't trust you. I just don't want I don't want you to overpay me, which I think is such a hilarious line. And she's really growing on me. I didn't love her at first.
Really, I always really liked her. I kind of like
really
these like quirky, like she's like just this quirky middle-aged woman hanging out on Tatooine. I like her, a little rough around the edges.
Yeah, well, super rough around the edges.
Yeah,
and
I like her.
I think Amy Sedaris is just doing a brilliant. She's just very charming. It's really hard to not grow to like her.
She's so funny. Yeah, there's everything she says.
I hate her haircut. I just really don't love the perm, but what are you gonna do?
Weird thing to know.
I just think it's such a crazy hairdo. It's Star Wars,
God.
whatever. It's just so I know it's petty. I get it.
Yeah.
No, it's pronounced Pelly.
I don't like her haircut. So is you?
I think she's coming around on me. She's growing on me.
I'd like her better if you had prettier hair.
I never said prettier. You said don't put words in my mouth. Less ridiculous hair would be how I would phrase it. So she's kind of like she's all over the place. It's hard to track everything she's talking about all the time. She asks about Grogu. She's upset. She's like, oh, I could have made so much money. You got to open a petting zoo or whatever.
Yeah,
the idea of a Star Wars petting zoo is pretty funny as well.
I would 100% go to that.
Okay, but you go to Tatooine. You go to Tatooine petting zoo. What's there? You've got a
bantha.
A bantha. Okay, that's one. Obviously,
you can have a bunch of stuff from all over the place.
Yeah, sure. One of those 4-armed lizards that almost kills people.
Yeah, I want to say a loft cat, but what are they called?
Tukas,
a bunch of tukas, a bunch of stuff you can pet.
Couple of those scurriers, and a womp rat. Yeah, there
those
you go.
lizard dogs.
And a right. And a baby Yoda.
Yeah.
Okay. So she shows him the ship that she has in mind and reveals that it's an N1 Naboo starfighter.
Yeah,
and
very cool.
I jumped out of my seat. I thought that was so cool. And
For a hot second, I thought it was gonna be like a pod racer, like when she's pulling
I
off the
also
thing.
thought, because like I'm
Yeah.
looking at the thing, I'm like, oh, that looks like a pod. I'm like,
I
how does
was
a
like,
pod racer replace his ship?
I know. I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, is that a fucking pod racer?
Yeah, I was like,
I was
if
like,
he
oh, okay, no, it's not.
opens that up and it's Anakin's fucking pod racer, I'm
Yeah.
gonna lose it.
Yeah,
And it
I was gonna
wasn't
laugh
that.
too.
That wasn't the case, but it's
No,
just as
very
silly.
cool.
It's an N1 Naboo starfighter, and at first he's not impressed. And she's like, "Well, do you want your credits back?" She's like, "Well, yeah."
Yeah.
She's like, "Well, fine." I don't think she was expecting that answer. And he's like, "Well, he just wants another Razor Crest," which is like, I think very, very cute. Like, well, it's not the ship that I had before.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, it's got to be kind of hard to go from like such a big ship, like it was
to
basically a
room
cargo
for just
ship.
you.
Yeah, to just like a little, little. What do you call it? Like a fighter, right? It's just
a fighter,
ship.
yeah. It's like
Yeah.
he had a gunship before. It had space.
Mhm.
Like, this is not a ship that you can like live on.
No, you
like
can't
you
have a
could on
quarters
his
in
Razor
it. You
Crest.
can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How are you, like, where are you storing your
Bounties.
carbonite
Yeah.
bounties? You know, like, and like, I would like imagine if you had like a little trailer attached to it, like with a little like electro connector.
I hope
you
he
know?
does.
That would be
Yeah.
so funny.
Like a little
like
sidecar.
He's just carrying around. He's got a little RV pulled behind it. So she tells it. She's like, "Well, hey, let me tell you about the ship, right?" And she says it's handmade, no droids. She's like, "You don't like droids, right? So look, no droids, handmade."
Yeah.
It's from the old Galactic Republic, so pre-Empire, off the grid, right?
Very important.
I love. She's like, you know how hard it is to find parts from the old Galactic Republic. You know, I just like that line. It's just a fun thing to nod to. She's gonna add custom modifications to make it faster than a father, which is of course a reference to The Last Jedi. It can jump to hyperspace without a docking ring, which I think is a really funny thing to note. Anyway, it feels like this one's a bit weird because it's like an X-wing can jump to hyperspace without a docking ring. So,
right.
You know, it's like, is this supposed to be? Am I supposed to be impressed by that?
I think
that's like saying, "Ooh, power windows." You know?
No, but I think it's because most of these smaller ships don't have that.
That's true.
So, like, like TIE fighters can't really. That's why they always come out of other ships. Like, it's usually these smaller one-passenger ships don't often, other than X-wings and like military ships, right? So it's harder to find smaller ships.
Part of the X-wing, the part of its biggest, like, what makes it so good is that it can jump to hyperspace. So you can do these guerrilla-style tactics where you hit and run. Right?
Exactly. It's a little bit more military to have that, where it's like the average smaller ship that like a regular person would have isn't going to have it. So
right. So she's saying, look at this. It's going to be great. It's a classic. You got to see the potential, which this to me feels like it's kind of like a knowing nod to the Phantom Menace to begin with. Like, it's just saying, look at the Phantom Menace. It's a classic. You got to see the potential, because you know how so many people don't like the Phantom Menace. I think we just talked about this. I think it is way better than people give it credit for.
I think it is too. Yeah.
So I like that comment. Whether it's meta or not, it doesn't matter. So she's like, she convinces him to make up his mind, to not make up his mind until after it's put together, and then starts getting to work and recruits him to help. There's this moment in this episode where that happened, and he's like, gives her the money for the thing. He's really at this point completely free of all obligation. You know, he's been kicked out of the Mandalorians. He owes no one any debts. He knows Grogu is safe, and he's not with him anymore, so he doesn't have to worry about that. And I had this moment where I'm like, imagine not having to do anything. You could just do whatever you want. And I thought there was just like this moment of pure freedom. He's like, okay, yeah, I'll help build a ship. I don't know how long it'll take. They make it look like they do it in an afternoon. I don't think it's that fast, but
probably not.
You know, like I love that. I don't know if that's intentional in the show, but I just felt like this real moment of freedom where he's like, okay, yeah, I'll help you out. He starts to work under the ship. There's BD's flashlight. He's like, no, look over here, and he's just like, concentrate.
So cute.
Yeah, it is really cute. And Peli gets a new part. Basically, it's a turbocharger / supercharger type piece of machinery. Mando is surprised that, like, how she got it. She's like, well, how'd you do that? And she's like, well, it came from the Jawas, you know?
Yeah.
who can basically get anything.
Yeah. I love this. I
And then
love
she
this
learned that
whole
she
season.
dated a Jawa.
It's incredible.
And that they're super furry under there.
Yeah.
Gross.
And she makes this weird
like
yeah, with her teeth. I was cracking up. I loved it, especially when she starts speaking Jawaese or whatever later.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh,
well,
I
thought that's too
someone
funny
else speak
because
it.
having a human speak Jawa is like
It's
hilarious because the
amazing.
face has to make all these weird and like because
Yeah.
like and honestly anyone could do it. You're like that kind
Yeah.
of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, but it's seeing Amy Sedaris do it is like top notch comedy.
So funny, yeah.
In my opinion.
She just everything about this whole interaction with the Jawas is so funny when they I don't know, they just waddle up after. There's like the short little chubby one, and I
think for me, I think a lot of this feels like, okay, we've got to know her, we kind of understand who she is as a character. This is one of those moments where it's just fun to hang out with somebody. To hang out. Mando and her are just hanging out. They're just
absolutely.
They're just being buds, and I think that's like some of the best stuff is when you get those moments. There's an episode of Hawkeye right in the middle of Hawkeye where it's just him and Kate Bishop just hanging out together, and they're watching movies and trying out stuff. Like that's the fun stuff for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's what this
it feels
is,
a little
and
bit
it's
more like real, right?
Yeah,
like
it feels really grounded, and she feels like a real person, and with like a past, and it is interesting, an interesting character. So she's dated one. She starts talking in Jawa, and Mando basically says, hey, put a wish list together and they'll see what they can do.
Yeah,
right?
I love how he's like, what do you mean they just get stuff? Like you just tell them what to get and they just bring it to you? She's like, yeah, and then I let them root through my dumpster. And it's just like he's unfathomable to him. Like, what the hell? Like how where do they get it? She's like, I don't ask and they don't tell.
Ask no questions, hear no lies.
Yeah.
Right? He wants speed mods. He's like, I love this part where he's like, I think I want aftermarket speed mods.
Yeah.
It looks like we're gonna need some vintage hyperspace tech if it's gonna fit into this thing. And she's like, oh, you do care,
Yeah.
And so and he's like just really into it. He's kind of nerding out, car nerding out.
Yeah.
And then there's this really brief line where she starts talking to the Jawas again, and they're like, ask her something. She's like, you know what? That's okay. I'm working on myself. Right
I know. It sounds like one of them asked her out, which is incredible.
I know. And then she just blows him off with I'm working on myself right now.
I love it.
Yeah,
every female can pretty much, I would say, or I feel like there's a lot of people out there in general who can relate to that.
Well, I think maybe in that one, it's like how many people were dating Jawas. It's like she's the one who dated a Jawa. It's like you're gonna ask her. You know?
She's like, "Oh, you like Jawas?" Like,
right, exactly. Like, have you met me?
Yeah. She's like, "No, I'm just working on me right now."
Yeah.
Incredible.
So there's a montage of assembling the ship. Kind of love a good building the car montage, right?
Oh yeah.
So they're scraping the paint off, although they missed some, which I thought was weird.
I kind of like that they left a couple stripes.
I don't want any yellow; just should be all silver. So there's a family of scurriers that live in the thing.
So cute.
I love how she's like, there's got a little nest, and she's like, looks at it, she's like, I'll leave it.
Yeah, leave it for now.
Right. You got I thought this was really cool because the pitch droids are always used for comedic effect and stuff, and they certainly are here. But there's this moment where they're putting together parts, and I was like, wow, look at them actually doing their job competently and well. I thought that was super cool. We learn that she's never been off world, that she's a local gal, she calls herself.
Yeah.
I thought that was a little fun thing. And then we also see that there's no vapor manifold, and there's a bunch of jargon that I couldn't keep track of. But essentially, he gets a NOS button. He can it gets like a booster.
So good.
Yeah. And then there's a new style gonk droid that has a clear part, and they use it to power up the ship. We see the BD droid showing off his hologram skills, because in the video game, that's how your map is seen.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Which I really think is really subtle and simple. It's not that subtle because it's a whole one scene is that, but they show, hey, where does this piece go? And he goes and he places it on the thing, and it's like, wow, they even thought of that. I thought that's a really cool idea. They didn't have to go that far, but they do, and and then he does a little dance.
Yeah, I know, his little feet.
Gets a little excited.
So cute.
Yeah. And then the Jawas bring another part.
This is amazing.
Yeah, and there's these critters could find a scud in a krill pond, is what she says, which is, of course, a reference to Mando season 1, where they have those krill ponds.
Well, and she also says scud in a skunk pile or something, or scud in a skunk pile.
Yeah, there's like a bunch of weird ones. There's a whole bunch of weird ones in this episode. I think later on when he's talking about when he's on the ship, he says, "As smooth as a gonk scomp jack."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Excuse me, watch your mouth." So. And well, actually, there's another joke about that later with R4, but we'll get to that. So turns out what the thing is a cryogenic density combustion booster, which is a bunch of made up basically words. They're real words, but put together in a random assortment. It's jarring. It's just bullshit. But turns out it's the same thingamajig that they used in A New Hope to like keep the walls from closing in on them.
Yeah, I saw that, which I laughed. I was like, that's cool.
I didn't notice that the first time I saw it. I will admit I didn't pick that up. But I think that's a fun, like, that's another one of those things where like, hey, if you didn't notice it, someone could point it out to you, and I think that's kind of cool. It's not. Yeah. They're not calling attention to it. They're not using it to pry two things apart. No. You know.
Yeah.
And apparently he's like, well, where do they get that from? And he's like, you really want to know? He's like, kinda, yeah. Yeah. And they're like, well, apparently they got it from a Pike Spice Runner while they were refueling.
Yeah. Which you're just like, holy shit.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
It's so funny. And then like, so you got to feel like they're going to probably try to exact some sort of revenge or something.
Absolutely.
Although how they'll know it got there or whatever is hard to say. But she does tell a short story about how the Pikes, ever since they started running spice in their sector, they don't mess around and they're causing all this trouble. And yada, yada.
Like law enforcement won't do anything.
We already know all that. So, the next morning, they cut to the next morning, and there's a dragon rooster.
Yeah, what is that?
I don't know, but it makes the exact sound a rooster makes, and I thought that was great.
Whatever it is, I liked it. I was like, oh, cool. It's like a little baby dragon.
Well, it kind of looks like what's the what's the movie, the animated dinosaur movie?
Toothless?
No.
How to Train Your Dragon?
Land Before Time. There's that little like flying one in that. So I don't know.
That's not a dragon movie. That's a
I know that. I know.
Movie.
I said dinosaur. Did I say dinosaur? Or
you
dragon?
Said dragon movie.
Oh, I meant dinosaur. Well, dinosaurs and dragons are pretty similar.
That's why I was so confused. I'm like, what are you talking about?
No. It's not like Toothless at all.
No.
Anyway, so the ship is done. They finished it, and it's being brought out by the pit droids. They're kind of like carrying it out. And by the way, I love. There's another example of where the pit droids are great. So there's two of them like carrying it, like pushing it out. And there's the other one who's like in the cockpit, got his arm hanging off the side, kind of like you would like if you were leaning out and just chilling. And I just thought that was like, it's just such a cool like pose to put a droid in. I thought that's super funny.
Yeah.
And it just looks so badass. Here's the honest truth, okay? I thought the N1 starfighters were fine. You know, in Phantom Menace and their brief appearance.
Oh, yeah.
That they make in Attack of the Clones at the very beginning before the ship explodes. But I didn't love them. And in fact, the like really long pointy tail thing is kind of silly. I remember them talking about how when they designed the what's it called? Like the palace where the ships are hanging in episode 1, that they hadn't considered those long pointy bits, and that in fact, those bits of the ship are actually just go right through the wall. You don't see that in the actual movie, but like they don't.
Oh, really?
They don't technically fit in the space that they're provided to in the hangar in episode 1.
Oh, that's super funny.
So, I just think they're fine looking, and this just looks so cool. It's like muscle car kind of like they even have that piece, that like supercharger sticking up.
Right, like on the top, hey?
Exactly. Yeah. Just like a muscle car, and it's so freaking cool looking.
Yeah, it looks really cool. It looks really cool, like all silver and with I like the little like accent yellow stripes, but yeah, it does look very cool all silver. And it just matches Mando's like armor.
Well,
and
yeah,
everything.
That too. Yeah, obviously that
cool.
helps. And then she's like, not a gram of fat on her. It's like it's just lean, mean starfighter machine. And Mando asks about the droid port, and she's like, with your disposition, I thought you'd forgo the astromech. And then then R4 gets upset, and she's like, watch your language around the customers, which I think is funny. So obviously a spot for Grogu, right? It's gonna be his little gunner
his
seat.
little hangout.
Yeah. Um, it just seems a little on the nose, you know. Like I
Mm-hmm.
feel like what I would have liked to have seen is him sitting on his lap at first, and then being like going back to her and being like, "Can you turn the astromech spot into his?"
Oh, yes,
Like, you know,
yes.
like
I
less
get
planned
that.
out. But maybe
Mm-hmm.
she's like thinking ahead, so I don't know.
Yeah.
So she has him start him. I love this, by the way. This is so weird because she's like, "Well, let's start her up," and he's like, "Really?
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean, really? It's
Yeah, it's like,
done."
shouldn't we run a diagnostics?
Yeah,
Nah.
like, okay. She's like, "Oh, I can hear it. She's purring."
Right,
Which
right.
it totally is. I love that
Uh-huh.
that language. So Mando takes it out on a test flight, and boy, does it look cool flying.
It
just
does, yeah.
looks really cool. And he feels like it's handling a little bumpy. And she's like, "Well, that's because you're used to flying a gunship. Fly it like a starfighter." He's like, "Okay, I'm gonna open it up," and he just like, it just goes right.
Yeah.
And it's like he says it's as smooth as a scomp jack, which I think is a great line. Real snappy, really responsive. You can tell that it's like really moving. And he's like, and it's going. And you're like watching him flying. You're like, is that the pod racer
Yeah, I
track?
was like, is that
And
the
you're
pod
like,
racer track? Yeah, absolutely it is.
It
Yeah.
absolutely is. And he gets told to go to Beggar's Canyon, so he's going through Beggar's Canyon.
Yeah.
And we even get to see the off ramp that Anakin uses. I know,
Yeah.
like, there's some people who are like, "What do you mean? No one picked that up in 40 years or whatever?" And I'm like,
Mhm.
man, who knows what happened to that thing? Either maybe it was replaced and
Oh,
broken
I'm sure
again, or
broken
who
again.
knows
I'm sure
what.
they probably
Like,
still have pod races there. Like,
yeah,
who
like I don't
cares?
know.
Yeah.
I like what a weird thing for people to be upset about. I just think it's cool to see that's shot from the same angle. What does that same space look like 40 years later? Like the effects are really cool, right? He's ripping through, and we even get to see a womp rat at the end, right? We're like, oh, well, that's where Anakin or Luke was bullseyeing those bad boys
Yeah.
as he was flying through on his T-16. So it's just really cool. So he decides he's going to take it up into space. He's really going to give her a shot. And he takes the N1 alongside a cruiser. We get to see that Rodian again.
Yeah, it's very cute.
I guess he was like on a layover or something.
Yeah.
And he gives him a little nod that is cute. And then he does this like fun flight action stuff where he's flipping around.
Oh,
Very
I thought it looked
very
so
Anakin.
cool when he's like
Yeah.
flying around the big like cargo ship
Yeah.
or whatever you call it, freighter ship. It was
Totally
very
like
neat.
the opening of, very much reminded me of like the opening of Revenge of the Sith.
Mm-hmm.
Where
Absolutely.
like they're just flying really close to those cruisers, and this is where the fun begins. you know?
Yeah.
So all super super cool. He's doing these little spins, and then he gets pulled over by the space cops
Yeah.
in two X-wings.
I love this. I just like that they just hail him and he's basically getting pulled over by the cops. It's so funny.
Well, he's kind of like doing,
And he's
some,
like, ah, dank Varric. Like, just
he's
swears.
definitely. It's because it's funny because like I think he knows he's kind of messing around. He's kind of
Oh,
like,
absolutely. He's flipping. He's spinning.
Yeah, he's doing some cool stuff, and he's
Yeah.
like, obviously. I was thinking even when I was thinking, I was like, you are flying a little close to like a a passenger ship. Like,
yeah, they're
shouldn't
probably
s-
gonna get freaked out. Like, I'm sure their alarms
Yeah.
are going off, being like, "Yo, there's a fighter ship."
right, which is
flipping around
probably
here.
why. Right, which is probably why they had these guys show up.
Yeah.
And anyway, so he's getting pulled over. He's like, "You're not allowed to fly that fast next to a commercial ship." They're upset with him for not flying with a beacon without a
Mhm.
beacon, and that his registration isn't up to date.
Yeah.
It's very much like the police just have
All that stuff. Especially, it's like, oh, what did they say? Something about his engine or something doesn't
his
match
stuff doesn't
his.
match. It's like,
Yeah.
that's aftermarket. You're like,
Yes.
yeah, we just built it. Shut up.
It's like those guys who get pulled over for their like really
Yes.
loud hot
Their
rod
tint.
cards and their tint,
Right, or
and it's just like,
yeah, it's
you know,
don't you guys have better things to do? Like,
yeah. But it's like, no, because you're driving around like an idiot and being really loud. So I'm
Right.
gonna give you all these tickets.
right, here's all these tickets. Yeah.
Yeah. Stop
Um,
being an idiot.
And I love that he's like, okay, yeah, like set your computers for like remote control,
access.
and we're gonna like,
Yeah.
I guess, pull you down, like you can land your ship, and we'll give you some tickets or arrest you or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's very ominous. And then he's like, and then the other guy jumps in and he's like, hey, you know what? Why don't we let him off with a warning?
Mhm.
Turns out it's Captain Carson Teva, our boy,
Yeah.
from
Loved
who,
it.
by the way, repping a hardcore Canadian accent in this episode, like
Yeah, he
really
is.
hard. When he's like, well, you want to go back to the base and do a bunch of paperwork today, or what? Huh?
Yeah.
Like it's like I was like, that's pretty. I was like, man, you couldn't have toned that down just a smidge, but
I
anyway.
liked it. It
Yeah.
was very like Mountie Canadian cop being like, I don't want to do the work.
yeah,
Just let him go. Yeah.
Uh,
Just like, Yeah, I loved it.
So he's like, wait, did you used to fly a Razor Crest? Your voice sounds familiar.
Your
And
voice
it's
sounds familiar.
oh, what's your voice sounds familiar? It's not the silver helmet that's sticking out in
it's
the
not, you can see his head.
Yeah, I think he's just playing it coy.
Oh, of course.
And he asks about an incident that took place with the Imperial Remnant, and asks if he can ask him some questions. And then and then he's like, and then presses his little NOS button and jumps away.
Takes off.
Just books away, yeah.
Yeah.
So I love that. I love how the other guy's like, hey, how did he jump to hyperspace? He didn't power up his engines or anything.
Yeah.
And he's like, son, come on, learn some stuff. What's cool about this is that the other pilot is played by Max Lloyd Jones, who was the body double for Luke last season.
Yeah, I saw that, I think, on Screen Crush. I didn't realize that at the time. I thought he looked like, a little bit familiar, but I was just
it's hard to tell because it's not like you could see his face.
Well, no, and he has a beard, so he looks a little scruffier and everything. But I was like, oh, okay. I mean, not that we saw his face, but we didn't see his face in The Mandalorian. We saw it in like
a weird 3 CG mashup thing. That
unless you watch the like the behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's apparently Lieutenant Reed is the character's name.
Yeah. But I just love it. They're just being lazy. Like, nah, I don't want to.
Well, I think it's like I think what was happening is this guy was like trying to impress his captain, right? He's like, I'm going to do this all by the books, and he's like, you know what? Listen, take it from me. I've been around the block a few times. It's not worth the trouble.
And I feel like that guy has a bit of a like.
A little bit of a power trip he was going on.
Well, no, not that. I think it's a little bit like he knows Mando's like not a bad guy.
Oh, you're talking about you're talking about Tiva,
because he's just kind of like, I know this guy. Like, we'll just let him go for now until he's actually doing something wrong. Like he's
and it's like not only that, it's like I think he knows that he kind of helped out with the Imperial stuff. So
that's what I mean. So
he's giving him a benefit of the doubt here.
A little bit of okay, we'll give you a pass here.
Yeah.
Definitely wanted to ask him a couple questions about it, but
yeah.
For the most part, letting him go.
And then so back at the shop, Fennec drops by and offers to pay him for being muscle. He's like, hey, and he's like, it's for Boba Fett. And he's like, okay, well, you know what? Tell him it's on the house. Yeah. But first I need to play a visit to a little friend. And then it cuts to black, and I'm like, what? Crazy, because that's no Boba Fett in this episode, and you really just have Fennec just sitting up there like a ninja, basically. And it's like, okay, that's all fine and cool, but like, what does this idea of you having to visit? We touched on this at the beginning of the episode, so I don't want to retread that. But I don't think there's gonna be. I think we're gonna see Mando with Boba Fett next episode. I think so too.
Opinion. Yeah, I would agree. I think we're gonna see that as well, and then maybe we'll see where Mando goes in Mando, right? So, in between, but. It was like I said, I really enjoyed this episode. It was one of my favorites so far, which is it makes me feel bad because it's supposed to be about Boba Fett.
It's not a Boba Fett episode.
I know.
I think it's a great episode guilty. Too.
It's so good, and
Here's my take.
I don't know.
I think this is the best episode of the season so far.
Yeah.
But it's not an episode of the show, so I discount that. I don't like. I'm like, this is a great episode of The Mandalorian. It's not an episode of Boba Fett. I think the second episode of the Book of Boba Fett is still the best one, if you're just basing it on its own merits.
Yes.
And then
I think eventually we're gonna understand why it's here. I think we just need to see everything else play out, and then I think it will make more sense.
Yeah, but like I think here's the thing: like if at the end of the season someone's like, you know what my favorite episode was of the season, episode 5, and I'm like, I was like, really? That's your favorite episode of Book of Boba Fett, the one that didn't feature Boba Fett?
I know, that's why I feel guilty thinking it's the best one. I'm like, oh man, like I feel like I just wish there was at least a little bit of Boba Fett in there to kind of.
Well, his name is referenced.
Yeah, in the last 2 minutes of the episode.
Yeah. Well, so like that's the thing. Like,
I'm definitely not mad about it,
if it all works out great, I don't have confidence that it's gonna work out that smoothly. I feel like it will still ultimately feel a little disjointed. It's hard to say. Like I said, we'll hold judgment. This is really good stuff. I think it has really great narrative drive. Like you want to understand. You want to learn about the sword with Mando. You want to learn about the Darksaber, and you want him to impress the armorer, and you're upset with him when he disappoints her, just like she is, and it's like all that stuff kind of totally works, and then he's free of that, and you're like, okay, well maybe he's actually going to get to maybe he will actually meet up with Boba Fett this week, and instead it's this whole fun build a car montage scenario. It's like, okay, that's a lot of fun. It's really it's satisfying to watch. Obviously, as something is put together, it has connections to the prequels, which obviously is really cool. And then it does some fun fan servicey stuff that all feels like it fits.
Yeah,
But ultimately, it's not an episode of Boba Fett, so we'll see next week like what happens with the Pikes. The Pikes are referenced.
Yeah.
Enough connective tissues there, but it's very loose.
And Clatoonians are also like
yes,
they have that territory, so you know
but
it's
not
like
on Tatooine. Like imagine it's a different sect.
Yeah, but you never know. Like technically, Mando did just kill the head of some Clatoonian gang, and
sure,
it's like
that's
they
true.
they could be correlated with the other Clatoonians. Like who knows? And word might get back to them, and that could maybe cause some kerfuffles next week. But
we did say that there was, when Boba was like, don't. All I ask is you remain neutral, whatever, right? Don't betray me.
Yes.
We said for sure someone's going to betray him, so maybe it's the Clatoonians.
Probably. So, like, I feel like there's a reason why they use Clatoonians in the cold open of this.
Right.
Otherwise, they would have just made it a different species, and it wouldn't have mattered. So, I think there is a purpose to it being Clatoonians. So.
I sure hope so.
Yeah.
I sure hope so. Any final thoughts?
No, I really liked this episode, and I thought it looked really good. It was
so good looking.
It was,
everything about it, like the ring world.
The ring world was so cool.
The ship, when it's flying around Tatooine, looks really cool.
Yeah,
when it's flying around in space, it looks really cool.
There was like nothing that upset me or that I was like, I didn't like that. I actually liked everything.
Like even one little detail, like when he's flying above Tatooine and he's doing those little spins.
Yeah.
The little bubble that he has where Grogu's gonna be eventually. When it like passes over like the little blue outline of the atmosphere, it's all warped because of the shape of the glass.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, what a cool little detail to include in that to kind of make it all fit. And I just like everything feels. It all fits together in a very cohesive way.
It's such a good.
It's very good stuff. This is a great episode. That flashback was absolutely stunning. I feel like they were saving all their CG budget for this episode or something.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it was great. So I guess we pick back up with Boba Fett next week.
Yeah.
And we'll see. Well, and we'll definitely be there to break it down. So before we leave, I'll just remind everyone again, at Tower Babblecast on Twitter, Facebook.com/Tower Babblecast. We hope to see you live chat next Thursday. And until then, we'll talk to you then. May the Force be with you.